start in the east, temperatures peaking in the high 20s, possibly low 30s. Elsewhere, we're looking at high teens, low to mid 20s perhaps. As we go through this evening, it is going to be a fairly wet end to the day across many parts of Scotland. Outbreaks of rain feeding in from the west and some blustery winds here too. Across Northern Ireland, most of the rain will have started to clear by the time we get to around 5 or 6 o'clock, so some clearer, brighter skies developing later on. Meanwhile, down the western side of England and Wales, a bit grey, a bit cloudy to end the day, and there will be a little bit of rain around, but a sunnier picture as we go through this evening further east. That band of rain, though, does gradually make its way southeastwards as we go through this evening, overnight, and into the early hours of tomorrow morning. So as we start to wake up tomorrow morning, it is going to be quite cloudy across many parts of England and Wales, a bit of rain around, but as a result, temperatures not dropping a huge amount, but clearer, fresher air across parts of Scotland means it could be a bit of a chilly start here. As we go through tomorrow itself, yes, a bit of cloud across England and Wales to start off with, and there will be some outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain could turn heavy, possibly even persistent, especially across southern southeastern parts as we go through the afternoon. Across Scotland and Northern Ireland, watch out for some fairly frequent showers, but in between, some decent, bright, sunny weather around, and for many, a touch fresher than it has been recently. We're only looking at highs in the mid-20s Celsius. Into Sunday, and quite a cloudy picture towards northwestern parts, some rain pushing its way in. Elsewhere, mostly dry, bright at times.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in Stirling, the northbound exit at junction 9 at Bannockburn remains closed for emergency repairs. In Oxfordshire, the A361 is closed north of Lechlade after a gas leak. In London, the North Circular is closed each way between the M4 at the Chiswick roundabout and Gunnersbury Park at Acton for an investigation. There are long delays on approaches there. Also in London, on the A3 on West Hill, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between the South Circular and Wandsworth one-way system with queues from Tibbetts Corner. There are delays of up to 40 minutes to trains through Basingstoke after a points problem, a wait of up to an hour at border control at the Port of Dover, and in Cornwall the A30 is closed in both directions to the west of the Branwell Lane roundabout north of Penzance after an accident causing queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Should Prince Harry have accepted an award named after a US war hero at a glitzy ceremony last night? People begged him not to, but he did it anyway. It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Well, Prince Harry paid tribute to the eternal bond between mother and son as he appeared alongside his wife, Meghan Markle, at the glitzy ESPY Awards, dubbed the Sporting Oscars last night. The Duke accepted the Pat Tillman Award, named after a US war hero, for his Invictus Games work. But Harry's decision to accept the award was shrouded in controversy after more than 76,000 people signed a petition demanding he reverse his decision. Well, speaking last night, Harry paid tribute to Pat Tillman's mother, Mary. But that comes after Mary Tillman slammed his decision to give Prince Harry the gong, saying, "I am shocked as to why they would select such a controversial and divisive individual to receive the award. There are recipients that are far more fitting. These individuals do not have the money, resources, connections or privilege that Prince Harry has." So tonight I'm asking, should Harry have actually accepted the award? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews and make sure you take part in our poll. But going head-to-head on this now, a former royal butler, Grant Harold, and the journalist and broadcaster, Lowry Turner. Thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Lowry, I will start with you. I mean, the mother didn't want Harry to have it, but he did it anyway. What do you think?
I just think it's incredibly tone deaf. He seems to have an amazing ability to not read the room. It wasn't like this was a surprise because the opposition to him getting this award had been growing. So he had the chance to say, actually, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to accept the award. But he didn't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 9:30 on Friday, August the 2nd. Live across the UK, this is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Sophie Reaper.
A summer of riots, the Prime Minister launches a national violent disorder unit to tackle the growing number of protests across the UK.
This was a meeting to pull together our response. A response both to the immediate challenge, which is clearly driven by far-right hatred.
But in that news conference, no acknowledgement of the wider concerns within communities right across the country, or indeed an indication of what the government will do to try to address those concerns.
And was there a BBC cover-up? The broadcaster has been accused of sitting on the conclusions of an internal inquiry into alleged misconduct by former presenter Huw Edwards. Listen to their top boss, Tim Davie.
Another factor at this point was very significant duty of care considerations. I think it was right for us to say, look, we'll let the police do their business, and then, when charges happen, we will act.
Olympics gender row, outrage in Paris as a boxer who previously failed a gender eligibility test brutally beats a female opponent in 46 seconds.
And goodbye to my hero, Andy Murray's final match, British tennis star Sir Andy. His professional career ended in defeat in the quarterfinals of the Olympics men's doubles. Thank you for everything, Sir Andy. Yes, very good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. I've had 2 hours sleep. I'll tell you why just after the news, but I need lots of coffees today, Sophie. I'm glad you're here with me to look after me.
I have to keep the energy up to keep us going, I think.
Yeah.
I'm here for both of us today.
I think so. Sad news about Andy Murray. I say it every week. I know a lot of you don't like me saying that he's my hero because of his previous comments about England. Of course, he's a Scot, but I think he's Britain's greatest ever athlete. Let us know what you think about that. gbnews.com/your say. But before we do anything else today, and I promise you it's a packed show, here's your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ben, thank you. The top stories this morning. Several protests are due to take place over the coming days following the Southport stabbings, despite a warning from the Prime Minister that he will not allow a breakdown of law and order. At least 15 protests are reported to have been advertised online. Announcing a new police unit to tackle violent disorder, Sir Keir Starmer blamed a gang of thugs for a riot in Southport, which saw dozens of police officers injured in a clash with a crowd of men outside a mosque. The unrest came a day after 3 girls were killed in a knife attack in the town. 17-year-old Axel Rudakabana has been charged with their murders. More than 100 protesters were arrested when disorder broke out in central London. Meanwhile, police are searching for 8 people after objects were hurled outside a hotel housing migrants during a protest in Aldershot. Hampshire Police said a minority of 200 who protested outside the Potters International Hotel became involved in the disruption on Wednesday evening. The protest follows multiple instances of unrest across the country following the Southport stabbings. In other news, the BBC was aware former newsreader Huw Edwards had been arrested over the most serious category of indecent images of children since last November. The corporation's Director General has said that. Asked why the corporation chose not to sack Edwards after they were told by police of his arrest, Tim Davie said because the police said they need to do their work in total confidence. Edwards was arrested in November last year while he was suspended from the BBC after allegations were published in The Sun about an unnamed presenter paying a teenager for explicit photos. The 62-year-old, who pleaded guilty to 3 counts of making indecent images of children on Wednesday, resigned from the broadcaster in April on medical advice. And 3 US citizens freed in a Russian West prisoner swap are back on American soil after landing in Maryland. Evan Gershkovich, Paul Wieland and Alsu Kurmasheva were greeted by US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Gershkovich was also welcomed by his family, who have waited 491 days for his release. He was detained since March last year on charges of espionage, which he had always denied. The White House says the US negotiated the trade with Russia, Germany and 3 other countries. It involved 24 prisoners, including 16 moving from Russia to the West, and 8 prisoners held in the West being sent back to Russia. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome back. Thanks, Tatiana. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Ben Leo and this morning, Sophie Reaper.
Yes,
welcome, Sophie.
Here we are.
Yeah, you've had a busy couple of weeks, haven't you?
A very busy couple of weeks. Olympics, Southport, and now down to London.
Well, we'll chat about that in the next hour or so because we're quite pushed for time. But talking on Southport, so Keir Starmer, of course, yesterday he unveiled new police capabilities to address violent disorder in England, labelling those responsible as a, quote, tiny, mindless minority. Take a listen.
And let me be clear. The meeting this afternoon was not about pointing the finger of blame. That is not how this government of service conducts its business, because it doesn't work. Rather, this was a meeting to pull together our response both to the immediate challenge, which is clearly driven by far-right hatred.
Now, this comes as a judge named the teenager charged in connection with the mass stabbing in Southport as 17-year-old Axel Rudakabana yesterday.
3 children were killed during the attack. That's as 2 other girls who were injured have now left hospital. Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now for the latest. Mark, what can you tell us this morning?
Well, some good news at least in that last night there were no scenes of disorder that we know of anywhere in the country. Some of that might have been to do with the inclement weather. We're not out of the woods yet, of course, because the weekend is coming up and there is concern that, as always, there are more people about weekends, and we understand there are a number of protests that are planned. So that's why the police were down in Downing Street yesterday, meeting the Prime Minister, looking at what they can do, really, to try to ensure that they are as best prepared as possible for protests that might turn violent. At the end of it, of course, we got the customary, we're setting up a new unit response from the government. We get this from whatever government is in office. I don't know what unit it is that's going to bring together police forces to better deal with these potentially violent offenders that are planning these violent protests, because that already exists. There is already widespread sharing of intelligence between forces that works very well. There's already a system that they call mutual aid in place, where police forces can, at very short notice, rush extra resources from their force area to another force area if they are struggling to deal with disorder. However, it looks as though those in charge are really getting to grips with the crisis.
What would this unit look like, Mark? What would it actually do? I think there's a lot of people, like you said, it was the customary response. What kind of impacts is it actually going to have on the ground?
Well, according to the Prime Minister, it would do things like try to introduce banning orders. It would look at the intelligence picture of who might be travelling from one part of the country to another, to actively take part in a protest with the intention of actually bringing violence and disorder to these protests. But as I say, those kind of intelligence structures are in place at the moment. Police forces, you know, they've been doing this for years. They have intelligence units right across the country who do that. Okay, they may have new impetus, new systems may be put in place. They, at the very least, are getting the green light from the government clearly to be more proactive in the response to the planning of these protests and going after those that they feel might be behind the violence. I think, for me, the important takeaway from the meeting yesterday, the news conference afterwards, was no mention at all, no questions, no acknowledgement from Sir Keir Starmer about wider community concerns that have been building for a long period of time. And I think that was a bit of a missed opportunity. Of course, we've got to condemn the violence and the disorder, but maybe we also need to acknowledge that there is deep frustration in communities who really are concerned at what they see is the disintegration of the social fabric of those communities.
Yeah, as you say, Mark, no doubt there were some quote-unquote far-right thugs in those riots.
Undoubtedly,
totally unsavoury behaviour. However, as you said, when Sir Keir Starmer gives a speech and he answers questions from the press, none of the press bothered to ask about the concerns from the community up in Southport and across the country, and the concerns of everyday Brits who are now worried about the safety of their kids, for example. So, yeah, Mark White, thanks very much, appreciate it. We're joined now by former Labour MP Bill Rammell, who is down the line. Good morning, Bill. So is this all the fault of the so-called far-right then? What's your thoughts?
I mean, firstly, the killing of 3 innocent girls in Southport, the injuring of 7 others was an appalling tragedy. It's every parent's worst nightmare, and the full force of the law has got to be brought to book on the perpetrator. But what we've seen over the last few days is coordinated, organised, violent buggery by extreme right-wing groups. And I think what the Prime Minister was doing yesterday was sending out a very clear message that the police are not going to tolerate this, and every mechanism is going to be used to tackle these people, because they are using and abusing an appalling tragedy to just perpetuate violence.
So, Bill, sorry to interrupt. Are people not allowed to be angry then at what's happened? Not just in Southport, but, you know, the British Army soldier who was hacked to death, the BBC presenter, the commentator, horse racing commentator, who came home to find his daughters and wife murdered. This isn't just an issue of Islam or migrants or anything like that. It's about the breakdown of law and order in society. Are people not allowed to be afraid and frightened and concerned?
Of course people can have concerns and be frightened, but Ben, look at those photographs, that imagery on your screen. These aren't people who are afraid, who are expressing concern. They are throwing bricks, they are throwing everything at hand at the police who've actually been defending the community. This is not in any way, shape or form the way that people should behave.
OK, Bill.
And I think it's absolutely right that a unit is being set up to coordinate intelligence sharing, the use and the rolling out of mobile facial recognition cameras across the country. Currently, they're only used in London. I think that will be important. And criminal behaviour orders so that the perpetrators can be identified and we can impose travel bans on them. And if they breach those, they can get up to 5 years in prison. This needs a firm response.
OK, I agree. Yeah, we don't want to see these kind of scenes on the streets of Britain. People shouldn't be having their homes targeted, mosques shouldn't be targeted. Absolutely agree. But where was Sir Keir Starmer's address to the nation in the Hares Hills riots?
Look, Keir has made absolutely clear that we need to crack down on crime across the board. And if you're talking about, asylum seekers being housed in hotels, we're tackling that. We are speeding up the process of claims. And if you've got the right to stay here, you'll be able to do so. If not, you'll be sent back to your country of origin. So, the problems are being tackled, but what we've seen over the recent days is just organised, coordinated, violent thuggery, and it has to be addressed.
Bill, in terms of the impacts that this violent disorder unit will have, I was in Southport during that riot, and these people who were there, they were not going to be deterred by the police there, and it's all well and good having facial recognition to identify them after the fact. What good is that when a riot is already ongoing? How are we going to prevent it?
Well, I think you will see, as the rolling out of facial recognition cameras takes place and the perpetrators can be identified, I think there will be a deterrent effect because these people know they're going to be prosecuted. And look, Keir Starmer, when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, has got a track record of doing this very effectively. If you go back to 2011, in response to urban riots there, he established 3,000 people being sent to round-the-clock courts and having really harsh sentences levied on them. So you can tackle these problems, and they need to be tackled, because these people who are perpetrating this violence, they're not expressing community concerns. They are looking to whip up hatred, and they're looking to cause violence, and they are attacking the police, and it's completely unacceptable.
Yeah. OK, Bill, I mean, you didn't really answer my question. I said, what's the difference between Southport riots and the Hares Hill riots? The Sir Keir Starmer didn't give an urgent address to the nation for Hares Hill, but here we are. Anyway, we're running out of time, but thank you, Bill, for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, up next, we're going to celebrate Team GB's success at the Olympics so far, despite your opinions on it. And the sad news that Sir Andy Murray's professional career has ended in defeat in the quarterfinals of the men's doubles. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
I'm joined now by royal biographer and former royal photographer, Ian Lloyd. Ian.
Hello, Jacob.
Thank you
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for joining me. This is going to be great, isn't it? The opportunity to go around and see where the King comes onto the balcony from. Really interesting insight to how Buckingham Palace works.
It's exciting. I went yesterday, there was a press preview, and the thing that struck me first of all is that if you're the King and or the late Queen and you're on the balcony, you can't see the Mall. I mean, we all see people coming down from the top, you know, thousands of people crowding in towards Buckingham Palace. They can't see it because of this great monument to Queen Victoria called the, Queen Victoria Memorial, or they call it the wedding cake, but it blocks the view. So apparently the King has a TV in there, and the late Queen did as well. So what they do is they when they're waiting to come on, they're watching the TV to see how the crowd's getting nearer the palace. And the other thing that struck me is when we were on it looking down, is you can actually see individual faces in the crowd out there, because we looked out, you know. So they do get a good view of what's happening directly underneath the palace, you know.
So they can see individuals. So if there's a friendly face in the crowd, they can see that person and possibly even wave. But they can't see that enormous mass of people you get at the big events that goes back towards Admiralty Arch.
The other thing I learned is there's a great historical link, because the person that put the east wing on the palace, because it was originally 3 sides, and Queen Victoria had, of course, 9 children, so they had to build a 4th side for all the nurseries and things. Edward Blord was the architect, but the master builder was Thomas Cubitt.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Well, good morning. It's 10 to 10, and this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, let's get some sports updates from the man himself, Aidan McGee. Aidan, what's going on in the Olympics?
Well, good to see you both. Forget sewage in La Seine, forget that convoluted and lengthy opening ceremony which you saw last week, Sophie. This could well be the story of the Olympics. It certainly is so far. This was Iman Khalif of Algeria, who had a welterweight fight yesterday with Angela Carini of Italy. Now, 40 seconds into the fight, having taken some brutalised punishment in that period. I mean, the first punch Carini took from Khalif was enough to dislodge her strap under her helmet, and she just said after 46 seconds to her coach, "I'm done. I'm out of here. I've never been punched so hard." That's what she said afterwards. Now, Yes, we all know that there is controversy surrounding Iman Khalif and her status as a female boxer, but she was born female. This isn't about someone who transitioned and went into the ring and it's a bloke in a ring, although there are suggestions that there's an XY chromosome here and there's increased muscle mass. And there are all sorts of reasons why she shouldn't be fighting. She posed a danger to Angela Carini. And so the background to this is that the IBA, who are governing boxing, refused the right of Iman Khalif and another boxer, Chinese boxer called Lin Yuting, to compete at the World Championships last year because they failed the gender tests. And so, again, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about here, but the IBA were told they aren't governing boxing at the Olympics because they were just due to governance issues. They weren't scoring bouts correctly. There were other failures, and so there's nothing to do with this, but they were told they weren't in charge of boxing at the Olympics. It fell within the remit of the boxing unit at Paris. Their rules are much less stringent, and so that's why Iman Khalif has found her way into the ring, and she could have caused a lot of damage yesterday. And
so the IBA have said, we did a gender test on this person, they have XY chromosomes, you're a male. Yep. And the Olympic Association, the International Olympic Committee, they say, well, our own criteria for whether we allow them or not pretty much comes down to a passport. If it's a female in your passport, Mark Adams, the comms chief for the Olympics, said, well, our rules say that if it's a woman in your passport, you're a woman to us.
Yeah, and it's been a car crash for the IOC. I mean, yesterday, I know people who were inside the arena, and when they cut to the picture of Carini in the ring sobbing, they just cut to a picture of the Eiffel Tower on the official Olympic feed. It was a very, very desperate situation for them. Look, I mean, you could make an argument that, she was born female. She has maybe it's a superpower. Maybe boxing is about getting hurt. Maybe Carini's defence wasn't good. You can make all these kind of arguments, but sooner or later there has to be a decision made because I think somebody's going to get seriously hurt in there. In fact, today Lin Yuting is up. Tomorrow, Anna Luca Hamori steps into the ring with Khalif and pledging she's going to beat her. Which is quite brave.
It's a difficult one, though, isn't it? Because just to play devil's advocate, if this woman is, like you say, she may have this, it could be considered a superpower.
Yes.
And people think it's dangerous for her to be in the ring with women who don't. But then where can she fight? Because it wouldn't be safe for her to fight with the males.
No, and this is the thing. People are comparing it to Caster Semenya, the runner.
It's different though, isn't it?
It's totally different.
No
well, exactly. It's one thing, Ben, losing a race to somebody. Yes, it's a bit galling, and you think, wow, this is really in the spirit of competition. But this is hand-to-hand combat yesterday. There was a serious danger, and so I mean, the effect, which is known as it's a DSD, a difference of sexual development. It's extremely rare. Yeah. So we could face a situation where Khalif, who hasn't actually done anything wrong, we should say, and by the way, she's lost 9 times to women. She is beatable.
Okay.
So it's. I mean, I think the IOC just took a punt and thought, look, nothing's going to happen. It'll be all right, and it's come back to bite them. It really has.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. We've run out of time for Sir Andy Murray, but in the next hour, hopefully, we touch on it because I'd like to pay tribute to him. But stay with us on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News. Here's your weather with Alex Deakin.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, there will be a decent amount of sunshine for a time because then we do have some cloudy, wet weather pushing its way in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and that is going to feed its way southeastwards as we go overnight. But for the time being, there are some heavy showers across parts of the east of England. These may ease for a time before more showers, which could turn thundery, develop as we go through this afternoon. It is still going to be hot in the east, temperatures peaking in the high 20s, possibly low 30s. Elsewhere, we're looking at high teens, low to mid 20s perhaps. As we go through this evening, it is going to be a fairly wet end to the day across many parts of Scotland. Outbreaks of rain feeding in from the west and some blustery winds here too. Across Northern Ireland, most of the rain will have started to clear by the time we get to around 5 or 6 o'clock, so some clearer, brighter skies developing later on. Meanwhile, down the western side of England and Wales, a bit grey, a bit cloudy to end the day, and there will be a little bit of rain rain around, but a sunnier picture as we go through this evening further east. That band of rain, though, does gradually make its way southeastwards as we go through this evening, overnight, and into the earlier hours of tomorrow morning. So as we start to wake up tomorrow morning, it is going to be quite cloudy across many parts of England and Wales. A bit of rain around, but as a result, temperatures not dropping a huge amount, but clearer, fresher air across parts of Scotland means it could be a bit of a chilly start here. As we go through tomorrow itself, yes, a bit of cloud across England and Wales to start off with, and there will be some outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain could turn heavy, possibly even persistent, especially across southern southeastern parts as we go through the afternoon. Across Scotland and Northern Ireland, watch out for some fairly frequent showers, but in between, some decent, bright, sunny weather around, and for many, a touch fresher than it has been recently. We're only looking at highs in the mid-20s Celsius. Into Sunday, and quite a cloudy picture towards northwestern parts, some rain pushing its way in. Elsewhere, mostly dry, bright at times.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in Stirling, the northbound exit at Junction 9 at Bannockburn remains closed for emergency repairs. In Cambridgeshire, the A47 is partly blocked at Wansford, causing delays. In Oxfordshire, the A361 is closed north of Lechlade after a gas leak. In London, the North Circular is closed each way between Chiswick and Acton for an investigation, causing long delays on approaches to there. Also in London, on the A3, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident on West Hill heading into Wandsworth with queues from Tibbets Corner. There are delays of up to 40 minutes to trains through Basingstoke after a points problem. At the Port of Dover, there's a wait of up to an hour and a half at border control, and in Cornwall, the A30 is closed in both directions west of the Bramwell Lane roundabout to the north of Penzance after an accident, with queues towards there and delays as you divert. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You really could become the next big Great British Giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
On the day that I got the money in the bank account, everything just seemed a lot sunnier.
But I do have something to spend it on.
Just go for it. It's an absolute must.
Thank you, GB News.
Amazing feeling to win.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 a.m. on Friday, the 2nd of August, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and Sophie Reaper.
Very good morning to you at home. I hope you're doing OK. Now, 3 young girls are dead, 2 discharged from hospital, and a further 5 remain in a stable condition following the mass stabbing in Southport on Monday. That's as a judge names the teenager charged over the murders as 17-year-old Axel Ruda-Cabana. Charlie Peters has more.
Southport is in mourning as more tributes continue to be left behind here in the town centre as the town begins to grieve the appalling incidents this week.
A A summer of riots. The Prime Minister launches a national violent disorder unit to tackle the growing number of protests across the UK.
This was a meeting to pull together our response. A response both to the immediate challenge, which is clearly driven by far-right hatred.
There's been a cover-up at the BBC. The broadcaster's been accused of sitting on the conclusions of an internal inquiry into alleged misconduct by former presenter Huw Edwards. Listen to their top boss, Tim Davie.
Another factor at this point was very significant duty of care considerations. I think it was right for us to say, look, we'll let the police do their business, and then...
And Olympics gender row. Outrage in Paris as a boxer who previously failed a gender eligibility test brutally beat her female opponent in 46 seconds.
And the Sussexes on tour. Harry and Meghan are off to Colombia after Prince Harry said it was too dangerous to bring his wife to the UK. Cameron Walker has more.
A country that has suffered from internal armed conflicts for more than half a century, according to the Foreign Office. So why is Prince Harry prepared to take the risk? More details shortly.
Let us know what you think about all of today's stories. gbnews.com/your say. And both of us, Sophie, we're flagging a little bit. I've had 2 hours sleep last night.
Yep.
I'll tell you why in just a tick. But then also, you've had a bit of a treacherous couple of weeks. You've been in Paris for the Olympics.
Yep.
Then you went to Southport. Are you
Yep.
feeling as knackered as I am?
Yes, I mean, I think I had more sleep last night than you, but probably overall I'm flagging a little bit more. But Paris was just the most amazing experience of my life. It's been a dream for me to do that for years, so I'm so excited that I finally got to do it.
But then you had no rest. You went straight to Southport to report on the riots there.
I mean, it's always busy in the northwest. I'm sure our viewers will know that by now. And they just decided not to give me any kind of rest, so we were straight there. But again, very important that we report on all the goings on in Southport.
So when you're working, just for the benefit of our viewers, when you're working day by day like that, and it's long days, you're reporting from dusk to dawn, how do you find the energy to get on screen and deliver the news like that?
You know what? I don't know.
Lots of coffee.
I think it just... You know, I don't even drink coffee. I'm more of a tea girl. I'm Northwest, we're tea drinkers up there.
You made a tough stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, it's so vital that we bring the news as it happens, and I think that's just what drives me to do that.
OK, and Tatiana's going to do just that now. Here's your news headlines.
And Sophie, thank you very much and good morning. These are the top stories from the GB Newsroom. Several protests are due to take place over the coming days following the Southport stabbings, despite a warning from the Prime Minister that he will not allow a breakdown of law and order. At least 15 protests have reported to have been advertised online. Announcing a new police unit to tackle violent disorder, Sir Keir Starmer blamed a gang of thugs for a riot in Southport which saw dozens of police officers injured in a clash with a crowd of men outside a mosque. The unrest came a day after 3 girls were killed in a knife attack in the town. 17-year-old Axel Rudukabana has been charged with their murders. More than 100 protesters were arrested when disorder broke out in central London. Former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley told GB News there are concerns over officer numbers.
Some serving police officers were asking the question last night, where are these officers going to come from? Because as things stand, there simply aren't enough police officers to attend to the level of calls and crimes that are already being reported to the police. So perhaps this is yet another good idea in theory, but perhaps less easy to put into practice.
Meanwhile, police are searching for 8 people after objects were hurled outside a hotel housing migrants during a protest in Aldershot. Hampshire Police said a minority of the 200 who protested outside the Potters International Hotel became involved in the disruption on Wednesday evening. The protest follows multiple instances of unrest across the country following the Southport stabbings. In other news, the BBC was aware former newsreader Huw Edwards had been arrested over the most serious category of indecent images of children since last November. That's the corporation's Director General has said. Asked why the corporation chose not to sack Edwards after they were told by the police of his unrest, Tim Davie said police said they needed to do their work in total confidence. Edwards was arrested in November last year while he was suspended from the BBC after allegations were published in The Sun about an unnamed presenter paying a teenager for explicit photos. The 62-year-old, who pleaded guilty to 3 counts of making indecent images of children on Wednesday, resigned from the broadcaster in April on medical advice. Former BBC producer, media monitoring David Keeley told GB News the BBC needs to have independent input into its decision-making process so these matters do not continue to happen.
This is something that the BBC should be looking to improve their decision-making capacity in. And I think there should be, when the next charter comes up, they should also be looking very seriously at independent input into the complaints procedure so that the BBC is properly on its toes, as most public bodies are.
And in other news, 3 US citizens freed in a Russian West prisoner swap are back on American soil after landing in Maryland. Evan Gershkovich, Paul Whelan and Alsu Kamashiva were greeted by US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Gershkovich was also welcomed by his family, who have waited 491 days for his release. He was detained since March last year on charges of espionage, which he'd always denied. The White House says the US negotiated the trade with Russia, Germany and 3 other countries. It involved 24 prisoners, including 16 moving from Russia to the West and 8 prisoners held in the West being sent back to Russia. And finally, in the sport, the Prime Minister led the tributes to Sir Andy Murray after his tennis career ended in defeat in the quarterfinals of the Olympic men's doubles. 21 years after his first professional match, his last match ended in a 6-2, 6-4 loss to Americans Taylor Fritz and Tommy Paul alongside his doubles partner Dan Evans. Shortly after the defeat, Sir Andy posted on X saying, "Never even liked tennis anyway." Following the results, Keir Starmer took to X as well, saying, "Thanks, Andy, for 2 decades of phenomenal entertainment and sportsmanship. A true British great." Murray bows out from the sport as a double Olympic champion, 3-time Grand Slam winner and former world #1. And he had this message for his followers on X.
Hi everyone, it's Andy. I just want to send a quick message to say a huge thank you for all of your support over the years. It's been a bit of a roller coaster at times, but yeah, the support I've had from you guys has been, extremely special, particularly when I've, been competing at Wimbledon and the Olympic Games in London. It was incredible. So yeah, just want to say a huge thanks for sticking with me and getting behind me. And yeah, I'll miss you all, but yeah, thanks for the support.
And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Ben Leo and Sophie Reaper. But it almost wasn't Ben Leo and Sophie Reaper. It was almost just Sophie Reaper. And tell them why, Ben. You almost abandoned me.
Nothing, not my fault, first of all. So, OK, first world problems. So went to Scotland on Monday with my family to see my wife's grandmother. Took the kids up there. Great day, well, great week. I came home, well, tried to come home yesterday. So my flight from Edinburgh Airport was at 7 p.m. I got to the airport and the airline said, your flight's been pushed back to 11 p.m. I said, well, I can't do that because it means getting home at maybe back to London at 2 in the morning. I'd have no sleep for the show today. So I booked a separate flight with another airline. A few hours later, that flight was cancelled. And I thought, OK, well, look, I'm going to have to go back to the original booking, leave at 11 p.m. and get back in the early hours. Fine, let's deal with it. What happens? I'm sitting in the airport terminal until 3 in the morning. There I am, look. Besides myself, not knowing what to do. And what happens at 3 in the morning, hours after the flight's meant to leave? They cancel that as well. So I'm lying on the airport floor for 10 hours after my flight's meant to leave. And finally, at 6 in the morning, I managed to get a flight back to London, and I made it here just in time with about maybe 30 minutes to spare. But the thing is, my problem with this is nobody from either airline told me what was going on, why the flights were cancelled. No one on the ground to say, oh, hello, are you OK? In fact, one of the airlines, a budget one, I won't name them, at 3 in the morning sent me a voucher for food and drink of £6. So,
it's not much, that, is it, really?
In an
airport, anyway.
Exactly. What's that going to buy me? Maybe a Mars bar or something. But the problem was there was no shops open at that time. So I'm just sat on the airport floor, shivering for 10 hours. Yeah, worried that I'm not going to make the show. I'm going to leave you alone.
Yeah.
So
first time on Britain's Newsroom as well. That would have been a very interesting one.
That would have left you in it, yeah. Well, you're good enough to do it by yourself. But anyway, I've had a bit of a night. I've had 2 hours of rubbish sleep on an airport floor, and yeah.
But there we are. We're here to do our job. Now, a community continues to mourn for the deaths of 3 young girls who were killed in the frenzied knife attack at a Taylor Swift-themed holiday club in Southport.
The 17-year-old accused of murdering them has appeared in court and been named as Axel Rudakabana. An online fundraising page has been set up for victims called Swifties for Southport, and they've already raised nearly £350,000 in the last few days.
Huge amount, isn't it? Now, let's cross live to Southport for more on this and get the latest from our GB News national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, of course, I've been in Southport as well for the past few days, and it's been incredibly a heartbroken community, hasn't it? What's it like there today?
Sophie, Ben, good morning. Well, you just mentioned some of the online tributes and people donating to support the town here. But in person, there are plenty of tributes as well. Here in the town centre, we have a big collection of flowers, balloons and notes written by families, children and adults across the community and also from outside. I've seen some notes left from Preston, from Norwich and Belfast, families across the country wanting to pay their respects to the community and the 3 girls killed in that mass stabbing attack on Monday. 10 others injured seriously in the incident as well. And I was trying to draw your attention to a couple of the notes down here addressed to Vivi and to Elsie. One says, taken too soon. We can't come to terms with your loss, knowing you will not walk through these school doors with Bethany in a few weeks, written by a local parent. And another to Bibi King, the 6-year-old killed on Monday. Watching you dance on stage with my little girl just a few weeks ago doesn't make what has happened make any sense. A town really coming to grips with what's happened here, trying to deal with the incident on Monday and demonstrate that community resilience and cohesion. Because, of course, while there are those moving, emotional tributes, you've seen families with their daughters, their sons, grandparents as well, there is also a lot of anger that you feel can be justified. 3 girls shouldn't be killed in a stabbing attack at a yoga dance class for Taylor Swift in the northwest of England on a Monday morning. It just shouldn't happen. And there are more protests planned for this weekend after some of the disorder we've seen earlier in the week. And I think we will see a protest here over the weekend as well. Now, much of the people coming here will almost certainly be not from Southport, but there is also anger in the town. Some of those arrested since the disorder on Tuesday are from Southport. And I think we've heard some people deride them all as extremists or far right, but a lot of people here are just extremely angry. Anger that you can really understand and actually appreciate considering what happened on Monday.
Charlie Peters on the ground in Southport, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, look, I'm just about old enough to remember when James Bulger was killed. And I remember with the prison van going in and out of court, people throwing rocks at the van. You know, when things like this happen and they touch the soul of a nation and they rock our confidence in public safety, people get angry. It doesn't mean they're necessarily far right. I'm not saying there wasn't members of the far right at these Southport riots, but people are allowed to be angry at what's happening to this country. They're allowed to be angry that a British Army soldier was hacked in his uniform by a knifeman a couple of weeks ago. They're allowed to be angry that 3 little girls were killed in a summer club. You know, parents leave them to enjoy some Taylor Swift dance classes or, you know, whatever it was, a yoga class, and they don't come home. People are allowed to be angry. And when, for me, personally, when Sir Keir Starmer takes to the lectern and addresses the nation, and he talks about protecting certain communities, but doesn't once mention how he's going to protect children like mine from this happening again, not one mention of it, not one iota, you know, it gets you thinking. It's like, what's the priority here? Is it protecting certain communities and pandering to certain communities, or is it the safety of the British public, the confidence that we can put our kids in nursery classes or summer clubs or walk the high street without feeling like they're going to be slashed by some random person. And it's not necessarily an ethnic thing about immigrants or small boat arrivals or asylum seekers, because this lad, despite having Rwandan parents, was born in Cardiff. It's about law and order and public safety. And currently, lots of Brits, millions of us, don't feel like we have law and order. We don't feel safe. I'm sick of getting on trains and deciding where I should sit strategically so I can see everybody walking down the carriage. I don't like sitting with my back to people. Simple things like that.
What we need to do, though, we need to make sure that although there is anger and it's rightful, we need to make sure we don't forget about those 3 little girls. That is what's at the core of this. Now, an Olympic boxing bout has sparked outrage across the world as Italy's Angela Carini was left in tears as she was forced to abandon her fight against the Algerian Imaine Khalif just 46 seconds in.
Khalif has previously been barred from women's competitions as she not only has high levels of testosterone, but is also understood to have XY male chromosomes.
Now, a man's average punch has over 2.6 times the force of one delivered by a woman.
So that begs the question, to knowingly put a woman in the ring with a biological male, is that just legitimising male violence in the name of sport? Interesting debate. So to discuss this now, we're joined by author and director of Sex Matters, Helen Joyce. Good morning, Helen. Thanks for joining us. What's your take on this whole charade? I'll call it a charade because some people are arguing that, you know, you're putting what appears to be, according to the boxing authorities' testing, a biological male in a ring with a woman.
It's been coming for many years now. It's been really a long time since the IOC and sports generally have protected the women's category. Just to recap, there are major physical differences between men and women, and you can't have safe or fair competition for women unless you exclude all men. Just as you can't do under 18s and allow some over 18s in, or over 40s and allow some under 40s in, or do heavyweight, like welterweight boxing and allow some heavyweights in. You've got to protect your category. And the IOC stopped doing that around 2000. So over time, there have been some instances. In the last Olympics, there was a weightlifter, Laurel Hubbard, who was male, and who made it to to Tokyo, despite really not being very good for a male. But this time, it's come to the logical end point, which is that it's in boxing, which is where male advantage is both the most and it's the most dangerous. So we don't know, because the IOC is being very cagey about exactly what the situation is. We're trying to read between the lines, but it's not right to say that this is a person who has high testosterone. Some women have elevated testosterone because they have a condition known as polycystic ovarian syndrome, but that doesn't put them into male levels of testosterone, and it doesn't give them male development. If you fail what's called a gender test, but it's properly called a sex test, that means you're not female. So as far as we know, the only conclusion we can come to is that this person is male. And I mean, certainly this person does appear to have gone through male puberty. It's not a question of a woman looking tough or strong or being very athletic. This is a person whose body looks male. So putting all the pieces together, we're pretty sure this is a person who has a disorder of sex development, was wrongly classified as female at birth, may genuinely feel that they are female, but they're not.
Helen, let me just ask you, where would you have athletes like Khalif compete then? I mean, this obviously isn't her fault. If you say this is a condition perhaps that she has been born with, where would you have her compete? Because it's not just her, is it? There's Lin Yu-ting for Taiwan. She's going to compete today. Where would you have them go? Where is fair to put them? Because it would be unsafe for them, wouldn't it, to compete against biological males? Because then they wouldn't be as strong as them.
No, not at all. Not necessarily. It depends on the condition. The condition, for example, that Caster Semenya has, and we know that from the outcome from the Court for Arbitration in Sport, is one called 5ARD. Only male people can have this, and you develop fully, you go through full male puberty. You're as strong and as fast as any other male. What you need to do is to have a female category and an open category for most sports. Nobody who isn't female can come into the female category. That's the way it always was, and it was very easy to organise. You can tell whether somebody's female by doing a cheek swab once in your life, and then you're registered as female. Nothing further. It's not invasive. It's not intrusive. Everybody else competes outside the female category. And if you think that that's invasive or intrusive, you should understand how drug testing is done in sport. No-notice drug testing means that somebody watches you wee, and they watch the wee coming out, by the way. And you have no choice about that. And if you're dehydrated, they stay with you. They don't let you wash. They don't let you shower. They don't let you change. They stay with you while you drink water until you're able to wee. And all athletes sign up to that if they want to compete professionally or at the level of the Olympics. So it's not unreasonable to ask someone who wants to compete as a female to prove that they're female.
Yeah.
What the IOC is going on is passports, but people in this country can change their passports just by getting a doctor's letter. So that's a very stupid criterion to use.
Yeah, indeed, Helen, it's insane. If I moved to Japan and lived there for 5 years and got a Japanese passport, it doesn't make me Japanese just because I've got a passport.
Well, it might make you Japanese. Well, it would make you a Japanese citizen, but it wouldn't make you ethnically Japanese.
Exactly.
But I mean, you know, ethnicity is just a much more minor thing than sex. Sex is really basic. We're not able to change sex. Sex causes the development of your body right from the beginning. This isn't. I'm not blaming an individual. I'm blaming the rules here. The IOC needs to have rules that allow for safe and fair competition for women. They used to have those rules, they got rid of them, and here we are.
OK. Thanks, Helen Joyce, Director of Sex Matters. Thanks for joining us this morning.
I think sex used to be basic, didn't it? But now, if we're talking about potential and open category, it's not necessarily that basic anymore. Well, the International Olympic Committee have released this full statement. All athletes participating in the boxing tournament of the Olympic Games Paris 2024 comply with the competition's eligibility and entry regulations, as well as all applicable medical regulations set out by the Paris 2024 boxing unit.
As with previous Olympic boxing competitions, the gender and age of the athletes are based on their passport. So there we go, based on your passport. You're a woman if it says it is in your passport. Good stuff. Okay. Up next, a new law bans marriage behind bars for the worst offenders. Is this cruel or a fitting punishment for those with criminals? Should lags be able to tie the knot? Let me know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a tick.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A new report suggests that Prince Harry is lonely in California and he's considering returning to Britain despite a seismic falling out with his father and his brother.
But the question we're asking this morning is whether Meghan would come with her Prince Charming or whether Harry would perhaps be more welcome here if he came solo.
Like Kinsey, we'll go to Kinsey Schofield live now in LA. Kinsey, we've got lots of time to talk about this and speculate this. We've got about 6 minutes or so to talk. But what's behind all of this? Where are these thoughts coming from?
They're coming from royal author Hugo Vickers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Vickers, but he's written over 30 books about the British royal family. And he told The Sun that Prince Harry will ultimately return to the UK with his tail between his legs. He described the Duke of Sussex as angry and says Harry is genuinely petrified of losing his wife, Meghan Markle. When asked his predictions for where Harry and Meghan will be in the next 20 years, Vickers told The Sun, I think he'll come home, explaining, I think Harry will come home, and if he comes home, we must be very nice to him because he won't particularly want to. He's quite angry, suggesting that he would be coming home solo. Vickers also said that Prince Harry looks slightly petrified of Meghan Markle and that King Charles has left the door wide open for Harry's return if and when he does decide to come back.
I can only imagine the culture shock that Prince Harry has faced arriving there. This is a kid that has grown up in castles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said storm. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 10:25. You're with Ben and Sophie on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News. We're also joined by author and commentator Nikki Hodgson and businessman and Brexiteer Ben Habib in the studio. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Morning.
Nice to meet you both as well. Obviously, it's my first time on Britain's Newsroom, so nice to have you both joining us. Nice. I feel like I'm playing tennis, though. Like this.
Yeah.
Now, first story we're going to talk about is this about Huw Edwards. So I'll come to yourself about this first. What do you make of it?
I mean, you know, there are a couple of stories here, aren't there? The first is the disgusting acts which Huw Edwards was, you know, guilty of. I think nothing could... Well, there are worse things than child pornography, but it's right on the extreme of pretty, you know, absolutely eye-wateringly horrendous. But I suppose the public interest story here is one of, you know, why did the BBC keep him employed between November when they found out what he was up to, when they were informed by the police that he'd been arrested, and April 2024, which cost the BBC, I think, a couple of £100,000. And, you know, that's effectively our money. And the argument they've made, as I understand it, is that they didn't want to prejudice any investigation that the police were conducting. But sacking someone is not linked to any sort of criminal investigation. And the vast majority, if not all, and I would have thought the BBC's employment contracts must include this, you know, employment contracts include a provision which allows you to sack someone if they bring the employer into disrepute. You know, we've all seen these kind of clauses. So he should have gone, I think.
So you reckon they should have sacked him, but of course kept stum about the police?
Absolutely, yeah.
Nikki, what's your thoughts on it?
Well, the way the justice system works is that, you know, until somebody is convicted of a crime, while they're charged, often everything is just paused. I mean, this isn't unusual. This happens to everybody, by the way, who is kind of charged with these offences. So whether they're a teacher or a police officer, exactly the same thing happens. If they're kind of a public servant, then they don't lose their pay. They're often suspended, but they're still paid. So this isn't unusual, is what I'm trying to say. But I mean, I think what is crucial about the story is really what the police actually advised the BBC do, because there's a case for them saying it is in the public interest to know about the story, but it's not in the public interest to know about it yet because we fear there'll be protests or, you know, a mass uprising, you know, as rightly happens when people are charged with these kinds of offences. We see it happen time and time in local communities, you know, paedophile hunters and lynch mobs and all the rest of it. And so what they'd be thinking about...
Do you think he should have been kept employed, though? You know, there's 200,000...
No, most people are suspended, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
without
that
pay.
is the standard procedure.
Without pay.
Without pay, yeah.
But he was suspended anyway, wasn't he?
Yes, but what I'm trying to say is that is the procedure that applies to everyone. It's not just specific to him. But the issue is about how soon the public found out about it. And the police argument, I imagine, I don't know, is that if we had found out at the time of his being charged, then that would have caused loads of public disorder. And actually other people's lives would be at risk. If, you know, for example, if they're in a fray, if they're in a protest. I'm guessing that's the police defence.
I think I'm with the police on this, I think. Because if that had come out in the tabloids at the time, I think there would be massive risk of prejudicing any potential trial. I really do.
Absolutely.
So
How did you get any jury to sit on that then? Everybody would have been exposed to it.
I mean, it's actually a court decision whether or not the name comes out once someone's been arrested and charged.
That's true.
It's not a police decision.
That's true.
And I still can't see why you couldn't at least save the BBC and all of us £200,000. You know, I can't make any case for him continuing, even for the lesser embarrassing. I don't know if it was a crime, but, you know, when he shared that one photograph, do you remember last year, which was the beginning and the thin end of the wedge of all the news that came out about him. Even on that alone, I think he was... would have been in breach of his employment obligations.
But actually, Ben, just thinking about that, you know, it's about disrepute, bringing the organisation into disrepute. But if nobody knows about it, then the disrepute hasn't been affected, has it?
Well, we did know. We knew that he'd had at least this one exchange
of course we
where
knew
the
that
mother of this child had said, please leave my son alone, and he wouldn't leave him alone, and he kept coming back.
But he had said himself that there was no issue.
Well, do you know who did know? The Sun newspaper and the journalists at the Sun, who had so much stick from, I'm not going to name them, but from all the lefty lovies online protecting their dinner clique set, saying that, you know, whatever happens behind closed doors is Huw Edwards' private life. The Sun knew, and they were working tirelessly and carefully to get that story out, you know, going through all the weeds of the legalities around it, and they did an amazing job. And here we are today, Huw Edwards pleading guilty in court to it. So despite all the lefty objection from you know, certain people, you know who you are. It's the Sun what won it. There you go.
Shall we hear what BBC boss Tim Davie had to say?
Yes.
I think we can.
When someone is arrested, there's no charges. Also, another factor at this point was a very significant duty of care considerations. I think it was right for us to say, look, we'll let the police do their business, and then, when charges happen, we will act.
Well, Ben Habib and Nikki Hunstead, thank you so much for your time. We're going to go to our headlines now with Tatiana.
Sophie, thank you. The top stories this hour. Anyone planning further violent protests in the wake of the Southport stabbings has been told that the authorities will be watching you to prevent the violence from spreading. Home Office Minister Lord Hanson has told would-be rioters to be prepared to face the full force of the law. Several protests are due to take place over the coming days. At least 15 protests are reported to have been advertised online. Announcing a new police unit to tackle violent disorder, the Prime Minister blamed a gang of thugs for a riot in Southport which saw dozens of police officers injured in a clash with a crowd of men outside a mosque. The unrest came a day after 3 girls were killed in a knife attack in the town. 17-year-old Axel Rudakabana has been charged with their murders. More than 100 protesters were arrested when disorder broke out in central London. Meanwhile, police are searching for 8 people after objects were hurled outside a hotel housing migrants during a protest in Aldershot. Hampshire police said a minority of the 200 who protested outside the Potters International Hotel became involved in the disruption on Wednesday evening. The protest follows multiple instances of unrest across the country following the Southport stabbings. The BBC's Director General says the broadcaster was aware former newsreader Huw Edwards had been arrested over the most serious category of indecent images of children since last November. Asked why they chose not to sack him after they were told by police of his arrest, Tim Davie said the police said they needed to do their work in total confidence. Edwards was arrested while he was suspended from the BBC after allegations were published in The Sun about an unnamed presenter paying a teenager for explicit photos. The 62-year-old, who pleaded guilty to 3 counts of making indecent images of children on Wednesday, resigned from the broadcaster in April on medical advice. And 3 US citizens freed in a Russian West prisoner swap are back on American soil after landing in Maryland. More than 20 people have been freed in the biggest prisoner swap between Russia and the West since the Cold War. Evan Gershkovich, Paul Wieland and Aslu Kermashiva were greeted by US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Gershkovich was detained since March last year on charges of espionage, which he had always denied. The White House says the trade involved 24 prisoners, including 16 moving from Russia to the West and 8 prisoners held in the West being sent back to Russia. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2734 and €1.1768. The price of gold is £1,933.93 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,254 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. Up next, former US President Donald Trump is in hot water for saying Kamala Harris only recently turned black. We'll have the latest from stateside. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, there will be a decent amount of sunshine for a time, because then we do have some cloudy, wet weather pushing its way in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and that is going to feed its way southeastwards as we go overnight. But for the time being, there are some heavy showers across parts of the east of England. These may ease for a time before more showers, which could turn thundery, develop as we go through this afternoon. It is still going to be hot in the east, temperatures peaking in the high 20s, possibly low 30s. Elsewhere, we're looking at high teens, low to mid 20s perhaps. As we go through this evening, it is going to be a fairly wet end to the day across many parts of Scotland. Outbreaks of rain feeding in from the west and some blustery winds here too. Across Northern Ireland, most of the rain will have started to clear by the time we get to around 5 or 6 o'clock, so some clearer, brighter skies developing later on. Meanwhile, down the western side of England and Wales, a bit grey, a bit cloudy to end the day, and there will be a little bit of rain around, but a sunnier picture as we go through this evening further east. That band of rain, though, does gradually make its way southeastwards as we go through this evening, overnight, and into the earlier hours of tomorrow morning. So as we start to wake up tomorrow morning, it is going to be quite cloudy across many parts of England and Wales, a bit of rain around, but as a result, temperatures not dropping a huge amount, but clearer, fresher air across parts of Scotland means it could be a bit of a chilly start here. As we go through tomorrow itself, yes, a bit of cloud across England and Wales to start off with, and there will be some outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain could turn heavy, possibly even persistent, especially across southern southeastern parts as we go through the afternoon. Across Scotland and Northern Ireland, watch out for some fairly frequent showers, but in between, some decent bright sunny weather around, and for many, a touch fresher than it has been recently. We're only looking at highs in the mid-20s Celsius. Into Sunday, and quite a cloudy picture towards northwestern parts, some rain pushing its way in. Elsewhere, mostly dry, bright at times.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M18 in South Yorkshire, there's a lane closed southbound after an accident between junctions 2 and 1 from the A1M to Bramley, causing delays. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, there's a lane closed anti-clockwise after a vehicle caught fire between junctions 13 and 12 from Worsley to the Eccles interchange. There are long delays taking roughly an hour in the queues, and there are also clockwise delays past the scene. In Oxfordshire, the A361 is closed each way north of Lechlade after a gas leak. In London, the North Circular is closed each way between the Chiswick roundabout and Gunnersbury Park for an investigation, with delays on approaches to there. Now, at the port of Dover, there's a wait of up to an hour and a half at border control. Eurotunnel reporting a wait of up to half an hour for passengers at Folkestone. And in Cornwall, the A30 is closed each way west of the Branwell Lane roundabout north of Penzance after an accident causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello, good morning, welcome back. It's 10:38. You're with Ben and Sophie Reaper, only on Britain's Newsroom. Oh, sorry. I'll start that again. That's what 2 hours sleep does to you. On Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News. We've got some emails, Sophie. Have you got any? Oh, you haven't got access to it, have you?
No, I've got one.
There we go.
I've had.
Nice and organised.
John says, come on, she did enjoy a bit of France, Ben. I heard she was drinking champagne and having French cheese all day long.
They're talking about you?
Apparently so. I mean, I didn't have time for champagne and cheese when I was over in Paris. I didn't.
How much champagne did you have? Come on, how many glasses?
No champagne. There were a few glasses of Bordeaux, I will admit it, but no champagne. I wasn't that blessed.
What about croissants? Pain au chocolat?
Pain au chocolat is more my style.
If I was in Paris reporting the Olympics as you were, I would have been sinking about 10 pain au chocolats a day.
We didn't have time, honestly.
Lattes.
And when we were at that fixed location at the Arc de Triomphe, like, there was just nothing. So there's a lot of hunger going on.
Yeah.
That was it. What have you got?
You haven't got the sympathy vote from me.
No, all right, yeah, fine. Fair enough, fair enough.
What have we got? Terence, good morning. You say boxing opponents were always checked very carefully, to be fair, and identity and weight and strength as possible. When did this change? Well, yeah, I mean, it's two different parameters. The International Olympic Committee judge a person's sex based on their passport, and the boxing, it's the IBA, isn't it? Yeah. The boxing authority apparently did a gender test, but won't really explain what it is. And they apparently, reportedly, found that that boxer in question had XY chromosomes, male
That's why they were
chromosomes.
disqualified, wasn't it, from the World Championships last year?
Yeah. John, good morning. I'm sorry to hear this, talking about in relation to Southport and the poor girls who were killed. You say our son was killed last year, Ben, and those parents will never get over it. Christmases, birthdays, the day it happened, the lack of support for being a victim of crime was apparent, and I'm sending my love and prayers. I'm not far right, it's because I lost my son, and now we're seeing time and time again people being murdered in this country. Yeah, John, sorry to hear about that.
Awful.
Yeah, I've always, at times like the Southport incident, wondered what I'd do if it was my boys that it had happened to. And
I can't even imagine.
yeah, I probably wouldn't fancy sticking around, to be honest. Eileen, you say, when Britain was a member of the EU, the one thing that really prevented closer integration was the British people's sense of national pride, pride in our country, pride in our culture. It's why the Europeans called us Little Englanders. Another John, should I read this one out? You're talking about my adventure back from Scotland to the show this morning with 30 minutes to spare. You say, Ben, it would have been quicker if you'd come back by small boat. Yeah, maybe. Very good. Right, we move on. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have announced a tour to Colombia, of all places, at the invitation of Vice President Francia Marquez. This all comes as Prince Harry said it was, quote, too dangerous, didn't he, Sophie, to bring his wife back to the UK?
Well, joining us now is GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, what is going on? Why is it safe enough for them to go to Colombia but not the UK?
Very good question. Both the US and UK governments advise citizens against all but essential travel to certain parts of Colombia. Let me just read you a couple of quotes from the Foreign Office about Colombia. They say terrorists are very likely to try and carry out attacks in Colombia. Kidnapping rates remain high in Colombia. Illegal armed groups kidnap hostages, both for ransom and political purposes. So not a great track record. The Princess of Wales, sorry, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex going to coincide with an online safety conference and ending violence against children, all very admirable. But just last week on ITV, Prince Harry said he refuses to bring Meghan to the UK because he doesn't feel safe bringing her to the UK because of their downgraded security. Now, unfortunately, in 1996, there was a big massacre of children. 16 children were shot dead in their classroom alongside their teacher. Since then, handguns in the UK have been banned. Colombia has been suffering from internal armed conflict for more than half a century, according to the Foreign Office. So does Prince Harry genuinely feel safer in Colombia than he does do in the UK? I'm assured that he and Meghan are going to have a full protection team with them at all times, alongside the Vice President of Colombia, and it's an official invitation from the government. But, you know, a lot of people are going to be asking questions about Prince Harry's claims about not feeling safe in the UK after this announcement.
I mean, it's all well and good having a full security, but if you've got kidnapping and gun crime going on, what much is a bodyguard going to do? I mean, it doesn't sound like my ideal holiday destination anyway.
No, I think the whole point of Prince Harry and Meghan going is for their charity work. That's what they'll say. Clearly, they have weighed up the risks and they're going to have a security team with them. But also, this coincides with a brand new interview that the pair have done. It's the first joint interview since their infamous Oprah Winfrey interview back in 2021. So it's pretty rare that they'll do a joint interview. Now, we did have a clip earlier. Do we have a clip now? No, we do not. OK, fine. Well, Prince Harry and Meghan talking about online safety. They're really trying to capitalise or tackle the trolls online. Both of them, of course, have suffered from trolls. I would argue that Prince Harry and Meghan's hardcore fans are quite do troll online themselves.
The Sussex Squad.
The Sussex Squad, as they are known. There is probably a working member of the royal family equivalent online as well. But it's about mental health and suicide of young people, causes they really are passionate about. But again, I think all of that being overshadowed by the security issue in Colombia.
Yeah, it just seems rather hypocritical, if you don't mind me saying so, because Harry and Meghan, when they come to the UK, they fly into Heathrow, they'll get off at a private terminal a lot of the time, be whisked off in a Land Rover somewhere, you know, to wherever they're staying. They'll have security on them, and they won't really integrate with the public unless it's you know, like an awards do or so on, where you need tickets to get in. It's a strict entry requirement. So I'm just not sure why they, as you said, why they think Colombia, of all places, South America, is going to be safer than the UK. Is it, Cameron? I suspect that Harry is aware that Meghan will probably get booed once she returns to the UK. Is there any substance in that? That's what a lot of people are saying online.
We look at the latest YouGov poll ratings for Harry and Meghan, and Meghan is the least popular member of the royal family apart from Prince Andrew, so that is potentially a factor. Prince Harry clearly is prepared to take the risk to come to the UK, because I observed him at St Paul's Cathedral just a couple of months ago, and he was greeting members of the public who had been out and about, so he himself prepared to take the risk with downgraded security, but he is not prepared to take the risk with his wife, Meghan, and his children coming to the UK. I suspect in Colombia they are going to have arms protection with them, and clearly because it's a Colombian government-sanctioned trip, they are going to have access to the latest intelligence, something which he doesn't have in the United Kingdom. But it only takes, as Prince Harry told ITV last week, it only takes one person with an axe to grind against the two of them to do something quite catastrophic.
OK, Cameron Walker, interesting. And maybe they've got a point. Maybe they honestly do feel Colombia is safer than the UK at the moment. If you look at the news cycle over the past 4 or 5 weeks, potentially in that small window, who could blame them? But interesting. We'll see. When's the Invictus Games? 2027?
Invictus Games got the Birmingham one, do you mean? Yeah, 2027.
2027,
yeah.
OK.
Thank you very much for that, Cameron. Now, some good news. Great Britain's Ollie Wynne-Griffith and Tom George have won a silver medal in the men's rowing pair at the Paris Olympics. Well done, boys. You know I'm a bit of an Olympics nut, so I already knew that. I was very excited.
Yes, very good. Apparently we're ahead of the US as well in the gold medal table. Is that still the case? We were as of last night, but I read online, I'm not sure if it's true, but I read online that the US do their medal tally based on all the medals added together. So they'll have 10 gold, 10 silver, 10 bronze, and
the official one is
by gold.
Is by gold.
Yeah.
So yes.
So yeah, sneaky Americans. Hopefully we'll stay ahead of them. Right, stay with us. Plenty more to come on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. We'll be back in just a tick.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
King Charles has launched his own aftershave, costing, wait for it, an eye-watering 135 quid for a 100 millilitre bottle, promising buyers that they can smell just like the gardens of his Highgrove country pile. Now, this is something that Meghan Markle would do, surely not the King. Is this a case of King Charles selling out, watering down the brand just like Meghan? Well, join me now to discuss this is the royal broadcaster Helena Chard. Helena, welcome to the show.
Martin,
often on this show, we've had a pop at Meghan Markle, the Sussexers, for selling out, for flogging strawberry jam, and now the King is flogging Pong. Is this really the right royal thing to do?
Do you know what? So the joy of luxury Highgrove splash, you know. At the end of the day, Highgrove is such a special place, and the Highgrove shop sells amazing things on there. And as we know, the profit actually goes towards charity. So it's the King's Foundation, which was formed in 1986. Profits go towards educational and training, and it's all to do with this sort of sustainable world. But not to forget as well the charitable aspect and the whole ethos of the King's Foundation, and that's so important. This is not just something that's going up on the website and just being sold purely to go into someone's pocket. So I think, you know, all in all, I think everyone should have a look at the Highgrove website and see what's on for sale. I mean, there are lots of really lovely, I think pretty fairly priced products, and even more so, go and see the gardens. You know, as we know, King Charles is a keen environmentalist, and the gardens are fabulous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference
It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's almost 10 to 11 this morning. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Ben Leo and Sophie Reaper.
Very good morning to you. Hope you're doing well today. Now, a community continues to mourn for the deaths of 3 young girls who were killed in a frenzied knife attack at a Taylor Swift-themed holiday club in Southport.
17-year-old accused of murdering them has appeared in court and has been named as Axel Rudakabana.
An online fundraising page has been set up for victims called Swifties for Southport, and they've already raised nearly £350,000 in the last few days. Whopping figure. Good stuff. Right, let's cross live now to Southport and get the latest from GB News national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, what's the scene and the mood like down there this morning?
Well, Ben, it's a mood of mourning. You just mentioned those online tributes, but in person, they're happening throughout the day as well. This scene in the town centre, gathering a floral tribute to the victims of Monday's mass stabbing attack, also mentioning many of those of the alleged attempted murders as well, with 8 children hospitalised after that incident, 2 adults, Leanne Lucas and John Hayes. I just want to draw your attention to what's going on behind me right now, where we have the Mayor of Sefton and the Mayor and Mayoress of Warrington have just arrived to pay their respects at this central tribute to the 3 girls who so sadly lost their lives in that mass stabbing attack on Monday. BB King, Elsie Stancombe and Alice Aguiar. There are large photos of all 3 girls at the higher level where those mayors are currently stood, but around there are tributes not just from this local community of Southport and in Sefton, but across the country. We've seen notes from Belfast, from Norwich, and close by in Preston as well, as people pay their respects to the victims of Monday's appalling tragedy. But there is also a sense of foreboding here, I feel, because more protests are planned after the rioting that took place on Tuesday night. Rioting that many in the town say traumatised the community further after enduring that attack on Monday. Many of the police officers responding to that incident were then called out to protect a mosque as bricks were thrown in the direction and cars were set ablaze. Now, yesterday when I was in court, in the Crown Court, when Mr Justice Menery lifted the reporting restrictions on the suspects and the alleged murderer's identity, and he was named as Axel Rudakabana, he did so in part because he said that an information vacuum was being exploited by extremists. He said that rioting was being caused by nonsense online, but it appears that some more disorder could occur later, as we are also expecting some more protests this weekend, one potentially here in Southport tomorrow. Now, of course, that's been met with a firm response from the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, but there is a sense of anger here that is also justified. They're not just far right, as some have labelled all of these protests. A lot of people are understandably extremely angry after the killing of 3 girls and so many injured in those attacks, the mass stabbing attack on Monday, where 1 boy has been charged. A lot of anger about that sense has also spread across the country. You saw further action taking place in Manchester and in central London, and also in Hartlepool. People reacting very angrily to the scene on Monday, but also, as our Home and Security editor Mark White has said, that's about many feeling a decline in the social fabric in England, feeling as though their sense of community has been moved along. And in Hartlepool, they faced a similar tragedy in October, where a Moroccan asylum seeker killed a man in the street, unknown to him, just a local walking through. A lot of the anger still being felt from that incident in October, pushing through into those riots we saw on Wednesday night. But here in Southport, mourning and grieving for the appalling incidents on Monday, but also concern about future protests that could rise from a lot of justifiable anger in this part of the country. OK,
Charlie Peters on the scene in Southport. Thanks very much. OK, plenty more to come in the next hour, including one of us, Sophie, should have been maybe at the Paris Olympics competing. Can you guess who it is? Was it me? Was it Sophie? What discipline was it? All will be revealed in a short few minutes, and we've got pictures to boot as well, so don't go away. Back in just a tick. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel. Annie has your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, there will be a decent amount of sunshine for a time because then we do have some cloudy, wet weather pushing its way in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and that is going to feed its way southeastwards as we go overnight. But for the time being, there are some heavy showers across parts of the east of England. These may ease for a time before more showers, which could turn thundery, develop as we go through this afternoon. It is still going to be hot in the east, temperatures peaking in the high 20s, possibly low 30s. Elsewhere, we're looking at high teens, low to mid 20s perhaps. As we go through this evening, it is going to be a fairly wet end to the day across many parts of Scotland. Outbreaks of rain feeding in from the west and some blustery winds here too. Across Northern Ireland, most of the rain will have started to clear by the time we get to around 5 or 6 o'clock, so some clearer, brighter skies developing later on. Meanwhile, down the western side of England and Wales, a bit grey, a bit cloudy to end the day, and there will be a little bit of rain around, but a sunnier picture as we go through this evening further east. That band of rain, though, does gradually make its way southeastwards as we go through this evening, overnight, and into the earlier hours of tomorrow morning. So as we start to wake up tomorrow morning, it is going to be quite cloudy across many parts of England and Wales, a bit of rain around, but as a result, temperatures not dropping a huge amount, but clearer, fresher air across parts of Scotland means it could be a bit of a chilly start here. As we go through tomorrow itself, yes, a bit of cloud across England and Wales to start off with, and there will be some outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain could turn heavy, possibly even persistent, especially across southern southeastern parts as we go through the afternoon. Across Scotland and Northern Ireland, watch out for some fairly frequent showers, but in between, some decent, bright, sunny weather around, and for many, a touch fresher than it has been recently. We're only looking at highs in the mid-20s Celsius. Into Sunday, and quite a cloudy picture towards northwestern parts, some rain pushing its way in. Elsewhere, mostly dry, bright at times.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch.
I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have said storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 11 a.m. on Friday, the 2nd of August. Live across the United Kingdom, this is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and Sophie Reaper.
Very good morning to you. Hope you're well. Southport stabbings. A community continues to mourn for the deaths of 3 young girls killed in a frenzied knife attack at a Taylor Swift-themed holiday club. That's as a judge names the teenager charged over the murders as 17-year-old Axel Rudakabana.
A summer of riots. The Prime Minister launches a national violent disorder unit to tackle the growing number of protests across the UK.
This was a meeting to pull together our response. A response both to the immediate challenge, which is clearly driven by far-right hatred.
And Olympics gender row. Outrage in Paris as a boxer who previously failed a gender eligibility test brutally beats a female opponent in 46 seconds. Sports Secretary Lisa Nandy has said it was an incredibly uncomfortable watch.
And Team GB wins silver. Ollie Wynne-Griffith and Tom George come second in the men's rowing pair as Croatia pit them at the post in Paris.
And they're back again. The Sussexes on tour. Harry and Meghan are off to Colombia after Prince Harry said it was too dangerous to bring his wife to the UK. Cameron Walker has more.
Yeah, a country which has suffered from internal armed conflicts for more than half a century, according to the Foreign Office. So why is Prince Harry prepared to take the risk? More details shortly.
Well, we would love to hear what you think. You can send your views into us at gbviews@gbnews.com/your say.
Yes, and we're going to reveal in just a second, I alluded to it a few minutes ago, which one of us should have probably been at the Paris Olympics.
Probably is a strong word.
We're going to find out in just a minute. We have pictures to boot. We're going to tell you all about the discipline and how good either of us was. Can you guess which one it was? gbnews.com/your say. But before we reveal all, here's your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ben, thank you. The top stories this hour. Anyone planning further violent protests in the wake of the Southport stabbings has been told that the authorities will be watching you to prevent the violence from spreading. Home Office Minister Lord Hanson has told would-be rioters to be prepared to face the full force of the law. Several protests are due to take place over the coming days. At least 15 are reported to have been advertised online, announcing a new police unit to tackle violent disorder. The Prime Minister blamed a gang of thugs for a riot in Southport, which saw dozens of police officers injured in a clash with a crowd of men outside a mosque. The unrest came a day after 3 girls were killed in a knife attack in the town. 17-year-old Axel Rudakabana has been charged with their murders. More than 100 protesters were arrested when disorder broke out in central London. 3 US citizens freed in a Russian West prisoner swap are back on American soil after landing in Maryland today. More than 20 people have been freed in the biggest prisoner swap between Russia and the West since the Cold War. Evan Gershkovich, Paul Whelan and Alsu Kumasheva were greeted by US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Gershkovich was also welcomed by his family, who have waited 491 days for his release. He was detained since March last year on charges of espionage, which he had always denied. The White House says the trade involved 24 prisoners, including 16 moving from Russia to the West and 8 prisoners held in the West being sent back to Russia. Czech billionaire Daniel Kretinsky's £3.5 billion takeover deal for the owner of Royal Mail has been called in by the UK government under security rules. International Distribution Services, the parent company of Royal Mail, agreed a takeover deal by Mr Kretinsky's group in May. It's understood the Cabinet Office has now launched a review process into the bid under the new National Security and Investment Act. The process will assess whether the sale to Mr Kretinsky, who's already IDS's largest shareholder, could affect the UK's economic infrastructure or pose a security risk. Serial killer Levi Belfield has been blocked from having a civil partnership after a new law came into force stopping the most serious offenders getting married behind bars. Belfield is serving 2 whole life orders for killing 13-year-old Millie Dowler, Marsha McDonnell and Amelie Delagrange, as well as the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy. It's understood he'd recently submitted an application for a civil partnership, which is believed to have been spurred the government on to bring in these restrictions. And the Prime Minister led tributes to Sir Andy Murray after his tennis career ended in defeat in the quarter-finals of the Olympic men's doubles. 21 years after his first professional match, his last match ended in a straight sets loss to Americans Taylor Fritz and Tommy Paul alongside his doubles partner Dan Evans. Shortly after the defeat, Sir Andy posted on X saying, "Never even liked tennis anyway." Sir Keir Starmer took to X as well, saying, "Thanks, Andy, for 2 decades of phenomenal entertainment and sportsmanship. A true British great." Murray bows out from the sport as a double Olympic champion, 3-time Grand Slam winner and former world #1. Well, Murray's thanked his fans for the support they've shown him over the years.
Hi everyone, it's Andy. I just want to send a quick message to say a huge thank you for all of your support over the years. It's been a bit of a roller coaster at times, but yeah, the support I've had from you guys has been, extremely special, particularly when I've, been competing at, Wimbledon and, the Olympic Games in London. It was incredible. So, yeah, just want to say a huge thanks for sticking with me and getting behind me. And, yeah, I'll miss you all, but yeah, thanks for the support.
And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Ben Leo and Sophie Reaper. Now, breaking news, another medal. Great Britain's Jack Law and Anthony Harding have won the bronze medal in the men's synchronised 3-metre springboard diving at the Paris Olympics. I said they would win a medal.
You did. You called it.
I knew Jack Law. He's a brilliant diver. I knew he would do well.
You called it this morning. Is this the lad who was... he signed up to OnlyFans to kind of raise money for his campaign?
Yes, it is a conversation to have about Team GB because they just don't get enough sponsorship. So he felt that was the only way that he could raise enough money to carry on doing what he loved.
Yeah, that's not the story, the fact he signed up to OnlyFans. I mean, he has to raise money however he can. The story is, why aren't our athletes being funded properly? You're going to the Olympics. Why they should have the...
Especially when they're winning medals for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking us up the table.
Right, anyway, elsewhere at the Olympics, of course, it was my personal hero's Andy Murray. He said farewell after being eliminated. I think it was in the quarter-finals, wasn't it, of the singles or the doubles.
With Dan Evans, yes.
And that's it. He's finished. His career is over. 3 Grand Slams, plenty of ATP titles. Yeah, 1,000, I think how many? 1,000 Masters, maybe 20 or 30. Anyway, he's a legend of the game. Sir Andy Murray, this is what he had to say.
Hi everyone, it's Andy. I just want to send a quick message to say a huge thank you for all of your support over the years. It's been a bit of a roller coaster at times, but yeah, the support I've had from you guys has been, extremely special. Just want to say a huge thanks for sticking with me and getting behind me. And yeah, I'll miss you all, but yeah, thanks for the support.
Well done, Andy. Good stuff. A true inspiration, especially for those who play tennis, not least my boys. So.
You're devastated. I can tell that you're very upset about this.
Yeah, you know, for Wimbledon anyway, for a Brit to win Wimbledon, it was such a hoodoo for years. I remember, you know, we had Tim Henman, we had Martin Lee, who was the British number 2 around the time of Tim Henman. None of them could do it, and then Andy comes along and, you know, defies the odds. So,
a brilliant sportsman, absolutely.
Just talking about the Olympics, Sophie. So I heard that apparently if you weren't gracing us with your brilliant TV reporting and presenting skills, that you quite possibly would have been at the Paris Olympics this summer. What's the story to that?
So I used to be a long jumper. So for the people writing in with all your guesses, it wasn't karate, it was long jump. I started when I was 8 years old. And there you can see me there. I'm right in the middle with my big long white socks on. That was our senior team at Bolton Harriers after we'd just won the season.
So which one are you? You're to the right of the trophy holder?
The girl holding the plate, and if you're looking at the screen, I'm to the right of her with big long white socks on and my ponytail there.
How old are you there?
About 15, 16, I want to say.
And that's Bolton Harriers?
Bolton United Harriers, yeah, very proud to be a Boltonian. And yeah, you know, I worked hard, I did OK, and that was mine and my coach, Alan Parkinson, that was mine and his goal was to reach Paris. I broke my foot, and I had to give it up because obviously as a long jumper you can't take off the board when you've got really weak ankles, so had to give it up. But
so how did you do that? Breaking your foot? Training?
No.
Boozing nights out?
My dad hates me for this. I was on a trampoline, just a trampoline park, and it was the first jump I did and my ankle just went and broke.
Do you know what? They're quite dangerous trampolines, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
That happens
people
more
should know
often.
it more.
Yeah.
So, well, it ruined my long jumping career, but it meant I got to go and report on Paris Olympics instead last week, which was a different kind of dream. So there we are.
Well, between you and me, you know, I'm sure you would have been a great Olympian, but I'm happy that you failed, kind of, because you're here with us. So, and I'm sure the viewers,
almost sweet.
The viewers are pleased as well. Right, a bit of a gear change. Let's go back to the scenes in Southport this week, where Sir Keir Starmer, he has unveiled, in response, a police capability to address violent disorder in England, labelling those responsible for the riots as a, quote, tiny, mindless minority. Take a listen.
And let me be clear. The meeting this afternoon was not about pointing the finger of blame. That is not how this government of service conducts its business, because it doesn't work. Rather, this was a meeting to pull together our response, a response both to the immediate challenge, which is clearly driven by far-right hatred.
Now, Merseyside police have also said they're aware of online speculation about future protests and have, quote, extensive plans and considerable police resources in place to deal with them.
It comes as a judge names the teenager charged in connection with the mass stabbing in Southport as 17-year-old Axel Rudabakana. 3 children were killed during the attack. That's as 2 other girls who were injured have now left hospital.
Well, joining us now is our home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, a story, it's got 2 sides, hasn't it? There's the heartbreak and the upset in Southport, but then there's this anger that's driving these protests and these riots. What are the government actually going to be able to do?
Well, react to it and try to ensure that the police are properly resourced to deal with it. That doesn't really speak to the wider societal concerns. There's no indication from what came out of the news conference yesterday that the government is focused on that as such. They certainly haven't said it. It doesn't mean that in the next 2 or 3 days or weeks ahead that they won't then start addressing those wider societal concerns. But this news conference we got yesterday was all about the police response to this, the branding of all those involved as being from the far right, and an assertion from the Prime Minister that they would not tolerate this, that they will go after those responsible, ensure the police are properly resourced, and that they are looking to try to disrupt any further protests and those that might be travelling to carry out what the government believes are violent disorder incidents in these communities.
Mark, is there a discussion to be had about alleged 2-tier policing? Because we had riots in Hareshill in Leeds not so long ago, and the clips that I saw online were of police officers running away from violent mobs. We saw people burning down buses and so on. Similar scenes in Southport, albeit for very different reasons. The police response, arguably, was very different, wasn't it?
Well, I'm not going to be critical of police for running away from a violent mob, because in Hare Hills in Leeds, they don't necessarily have significant public order resources on hand very quickly to be able to deal with a violent mob. At the end of the day, they've got to do what the ground commander thinks is the best possible way of ensuring they can try and keep order but not put those officers in real harm's way. So you will see often a tactical retreat, effectively, until they can get more resources in to try to take control of a situation. So I'm not willing to condemn the police for doing that, but certainly a lot of the rhetoric after Hare Hills did speak about those community concerns that had to be addressed, but no excuse, of course, for violence as such, which is very different to the rhetoric we're getting at the moment, which is no acknowledgement of wider community concerns, but very much doubling down on this is the far right, this is being orchestrated by the far right. These are not legitimate protests in any way, shape or form.
Keir Starmer made a comment at the press conference yesterday that people had been travelling from far away. They were going to protest in a community that wasn't theirs. But in actual fact, as far as I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, the 4 arrests from Southport were all locals.
Yeah.
Is there anything in that? I mean, where did he get that information from that people were travelling just to cause trouble?
Yeah, you'd have to ask the Prime Minister. I don't know. But it is absolutely clear that in those protests are not just far right, but of course people from the local community that are concerned as well. What you will often get in protests like this are, people joining in either because they're concerned or because something's going on in the local community. They want to go along, they want to see what's unfolding, and then, they get caught up in the moment, they get caught up in the violence, not, necessarily setting out to be violent, but these things have a momentum of their own. And I just think it's a bit simplistic at times just to say that it's all far right, because it's clear that there are people from the local community there as well. And those people in the local community, well, they'll tell you themselves that they have a lot wider concerns than simply just coming out to cause trouble.
Well, we saw, when I was there on the day after the riots, we saw that morning that local members of the local community came together straight away to put those walls back up, to, to clear up the rubble. That's a completely different, almost, atmosphere to the one that was at the riot the night before.
Yes, as I say, these things can just have a sort of momentum of their own. It doesn't take much. I've seen it, in all kinds of protests that I've covered over the years, from all sides of the political spectrum, from, different groups. There will be hotheads among them that are looking to agitate and cause trouble. And that can spark trouble that people get caught up in. I think, in terms of going forward from a policing point of view, they are saying that they are meeting, they are learning the lessons about their response. And I did put to members of the National Police Chiefs Council, when they came out from the meeting with the Prime Minister yesterday, look, was there a 2-tier policing response, a different response to Hare Hills compared to what had happened in other communities, chiefly, of course, London, where 111 people were arrested following the disorder there. And they said, no, there are absolutely national guidelines about how you deal with the public order situation, but it has to be up to the commanders on the ground to take those decisions with what they see and face at the time. The other issue, just briefly to touch on, that I think is probably a lesson to be learned for the police going forward, is what they do about messages that are out there on social media that are clearly false narratives that do stir up a great deal of concern and anger in communities. Could the police be quicker and more proactive in getting that alternative message out to debunk these wrong messages, and they did say they are looking at that.
Yeah, they
going forward.
used to do it all the time when I was a reporter at The Sun.
Yeah.
You'd go to them with a name and you'd say, they can't say yes or no, it's this person, because they need to protect the integrity of a future trial, but you'd go to the Met Press Office and you'd say, are we going to be wrong if we say it's this person? And they'd say, you'd be wrong, don't do that, don't do it. So they could have just gone on Twitter, on X, whatever, and said, this name doing the rounds now, which is firing a lot of people up, isn't true. And just quelled it, just quashed it.
One of the issues is that you can very rarely speak to a police press officer these days. The Metropolitan Police, they have their press office open, you can talk to them. But many regional forces, you have to communicate by email.
Yeah, and they take days to get back to you. Mark White, thanks very much, I appreciate it. Up next, guess which American political heavyweight could be funding Just Stop Oil here in Britain? Any guesses? gbnews.com/your say. Get the names rolling in. We'll reveal all in just a second. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a tick.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
An employment tribunal has found that a senior lawyer telling a legal secretary that she looked nice created an intimidating environment and made her feel violated.
Well, she's won her sexual harassment suit, so is saying someone looks nice acceptable in the workplace anymore?
Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Christine Hamilton, who thinks it should be, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid, who thinks making comments like these are unnecessary. OK, Rebecca, why is it unnecessary to tell your colleague they look nice?
Well, how somebody looks at work shouldn't be particularly important or relevant, but I think my issue here is that it's used as a sort of dismissive way to make women feel silly for complaining about things. Like, oh, it's just saying you look nice, why does it matter? But we all know there are different ways of saying things, and if you are an older man in a position of power, looking a woman up and down and saying, oh, you look nice, in a lascivious tone, which, as far as we know, is quite possibly what happened, that's not acceptable, that's not workplace appropriate, and it would make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Christine, she's right, Rebecca, isn't she? It depends how it's said. If you've got someone who's sleazy saying, oh, you look nice, you're going to be a bit off-put, aren't you?
We don't know whether this was said in a lascivious tone or not, and as far as I can see this particular case, the boss went too far and he did a lot of other things as well. But what worries me is that the tribunal has ruled that just saying you look nice could be included as sexual harassment. Now, I think that is ridiculous.
Realistically, women don't make these accusations for fun. Women don't make these accusations to be difficult. They do it because they've been made to feel unsafe or unable to work in a certain place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a very good morning to you. It's 23 minutes past 11. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Ben Leo and Sophie Reaper.
Good morning to you. We're also joined by author and commentator Nikki Hodgson and businessman and Brexiteer Ben Habib in the studio. Good morning to you both. Thank you for returning. Let's get stuck into this first story. Criticism over serial killer Levi Belfield, who's been blocked from having a civil partnership in prison. Should lags be able to marry in prison?
Well, what's so interesting about this story is, you know,
a typical left argument is that everybody deserves human rights, and under the ECHR there's a right to marriage, right? But I'm more concerned about the fact that there are women out there that want to marry serial killers, and the fact we do absolutely nothing about it. I mean, shouldn't a prerequisite be that you at least go to therapy to figure out what your dark desire is actually about? Because we punish sadism in this country, but not masochism. I mean, you know, we don't treat masochists, because how on earth is it in your self-interest to marry a serial killer? It's a really dark, depraved...
It's a very good observation. It's not where my mind was going, but it's a very good observation.
I mean, I said earlier, didn't I? Men are difficult enough to deal with without marrying a serial killer. Who wants to marry a serial killer?
Well, maybe you know where you are with a serial killer. Maybe that's what some people think. It's all been exposed.
It's the jeopardy of marrying a serial killer, I think.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I mean, my take is much more black and white, you know. I absolutely couldn't give a damn whether he's allowed to marry or not. This is a man who in many countries in this world would have suffered the death penalty for what he did. You know, we discussed how child pornography in the last segment I was on. We discussed how child pornography is so awful. Well, this is a crime that he committed that's worse than child pornography. He killed innocent children. This man has no business claiming discomfort or being denied this, that and the other. He should be banged away and the key thrown away, and there should be absolutely zero sympathy given to him. I mean, how can we police our country if we go all weak at the knees when a serial killer gets sympathy? I mean, it's absolutely absurd.
Yeah, surely he forfeited his human rights and whatever else he's protected by the moment he killed Millie Dowler, you know? So, yeah, Sophie, you mentioned something earlier off air about prisoners in the UK being different to the US. What is it? They're allowed time out?
It's my understanding in the US that you get conjugal rights.
Which is?
Which is being able to go and visit one's partner for some adult time.
Conjugality.
Exactly that. That's much better phrasing. But here in the UK, that right doesn't exist. So my question would be, not that that's the only point of marriage, but what's the point? Because you're not going to get to spend any time with them realistically anyway.
No, and things like, you know, assets are frozen, so it's not like you can inherit any cash they've got stored away.
That is the priority.
It's a transactional relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Ben Habib, let's move on. I'm sure you've got something to say about this. This conjecture that the protests and the outpouring of frustration and anger in Southport after the horrific incident there was somehow the far right. It's all the far right. We need to target them, we need to be on their backs. What's going on there?
I was absolutely gobsmacked to hear the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom label those protesters as far right. Of course, people shouldn't break the law. They shouldn't protest in the way that these people were protesting, attacking police cars and so on. But first of all, to say that he wasn't going to point the finger of blame and then say these are far-right protesters absolutely undermines his position as a Prime Minister. He's failing to recognise that social cohesion in this country is being ripped apart. And it's being ripped apart because we've had vast numbers of immigrants coming to this country from abroad, and what we've done when they've come here is make no attempt for social cohesion, no attempt to integrate, no attempt to bring different cultures together into some kind of melting pot where they can all emerge together in harmony. What we've done instead is multiculturalism, which is the promotion and celebration of different cultures, and in effect what that results in is cultures operating in silos with no integration. And you get the kind of schisms that we're now seeing in the United Kingdom. By the way, the scenes we're now seeing in the UK have been playing out in France a few years ago. And when they were playing out in France, I wasn't the only one saying it, but many people of my disposition, political and ideological disposition, were saying, look at France, this is not where we want to go. Unbridled immigration, coupled with multiculturalism, the protected characteristics that are afforded to ethnic minorities, religious minorities and sexual preferences, etc., that all leads to a breakdown in society. And what Keir Starmer should have been getting up and talking about was how he was going to bring society back together, how he was going to generate social cohesion, not to target one group of people who obviously feel very strongly, and understandably so, I'm not condoning their violence, but understandably so, about 3 tiny girls getting killed.
Yeah, Nikki, it seems like some old English thugs lobbing rocks at police is now a bigger issue than the fact that 3 young girls were killed in a summer camp. And by the way, Sir Keir Starmer, happily enough to take the knee for Black Lives Matter when they were burning American cities down and taking a picture of his knee taking with Angela Rayner and spreading it all over social media like some massive virtue. But when it comes to riots here of equal outrage at something that's happened, no, it's the fault of the quote-unquote far right, just blanket everyone with the same tarnish.
Sure, well, the problem here is that he's just labelling and marginalising a group of people without talking to them about what their actual concerns are. You don't just write off people that are causing trouble in your society and label them as kind of criminal and then do something about that. What you have to do is engage with them. You know, exactly what you were saying, Ben, about engaging with, certain ethnic minority communities that are quite closed. You need to understand what they actually are saying. And do you know that? I mean, I think a bigger problem here has been the fact that there was a lot of disinformation spread on certain social media platforms and that fed into anger.
Mm-hmm.
But so, we in the media have got a responsibility to kind of a fact check for people. But he can't just write off a group of British citizens because he doesn't like how they're behaving.
And I found it extraordinary that he chose to go and lay a wreath at this, in Southport. And when the crowd addressed him in public, he literally turned his back on the people, many of whom were in tears.
Yeah, a lot of people were angry, weren't they, because he was there at the site for less than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I understand security issues,
Oh, no, it was a photo op.
Yeah.
It was a photo op.
He should have been talking to people there, asking them, why are you here? What is bothering you? Yeah, absolutely.
Either don't go, but if you do go, then have the bravery, courage and wherewithal to engage with the people who are feeling upset. You're the Prime Minister, lead from the front. One of the things I think we're really lacking in this country is leadership, and Keir Starmer ain't going to give it to us.
It's not a good start.
It's not a good start.
It is not a good start.
No, when you bear in mind all the economic factors coming into play, potential tax rises in October, capital gains tax going up, and also, I'm not sure if you saw this, Ben, there was some story doing the rounds in local papers in Birmingham yesterday that apparently some Labour councillors, at least, up there, backing changes to council tax whereby you're charged, I think, something like...
So 0.5% of the value of your property.
0.5% on the value of your property.
It's unbelievable.
Which would bump up council tax for, say, on a home worth 1.2 million to £700 a month.
A two-bedroom house in... Yeah, a two-bedroom house in London would be £700 a month.
And completely unaffordable for most people. So if you're trying to sort out the economic crisis, that's not really the way to do it.
Very different issue to Southport, of course, but it's just these signs of his early premiership, this...
He would argue that the social problems that he's inherited came from the Tories, of course.
Yeah, but for how long can you keep saying that? How long can they keep turning up and saying, oh, look, the Tories have left a mess, we didn't know it was this bad?
Well, the point is, the Tories and the Labour Party are the same. They're practising the same policies, by and large. The Labour Party is just more extreme.
Well, Nikki Hodgson, Ben Habib, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Time now for your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Sophie, thank you. The top stories. Anyone planning further violent protests in the wake of the Southport stabbings has been told that the authorities will be watching you to prevent the violence from spreading. Home Office Minister Lord Hanson has told would-be rioters to be prepared to face the full force of the law. Several protests are due to take place over the coming days. At least 15 are reported to have been advertised online. Announcing a new police unit to tackle violent disorder, the Prime Minister blamed a gang of thugs for a riot in Southport which saw dozens of police officers injured in a clash with a crowd of men outside a mosque. The unrest came a day after 3 girls were killed in a knife attack in the town. 17-year-old Axel Rudakabana has been charged with their murders. More than 100 protesters were arrested when disorder broke out in central London. The BBC's Director General says the broadcaster was aware former newsreader Huw Edwards had been arrested over the most serious category of indecent images of children since last November. Asked why they chose not to sack him after they were told by police of his arrest, Tim Davies said the police said they needed to do their work in total confidence. Edwards was arrested while he was suspended from the BBC after allegations were published in The Sun about an unnamed presenter paying a teenager for explicit photos. The 62-year-old pleaded guilty to 3 counts of making indecent images of children on Wednesday. He resigned from the broadcaster in April on medical advice. 3 US citizens freed in a Russian West prisoner swap are back on American soil after landing in Maryland. More than 20 people have been freed in the biggest prisoner swap between Russia and the West since the Cold War. Evan Gershkovich, Paul Wieland and Alsu Komasheva were greeted by US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Gershkovich was detained since last March on charges of espionage, which he'd always denied. The White House says the trade involved 24 prisoners, including 16 moving from Russia to the West and 8 moving from the West back to Russia. And the Prime Minister led the tributes to Sir Andy Murray after his tennis career ended in defeat in the quarter-finals of the Olympic men's doubles. 21 years after his first professional match, his last match ended in a straight sets loss to Americans Taylor Fritz and Tommy Paul, alongside his doubles partner Dan Evans. And shortly after the defeat, Sir Andy posted on X, saying, "Never even liked tennis anyway." Sir Keir Starmer took to X as well, saying, "Thanks, Andy, for 2 decades of phenomenal entertainment and sportsmanship, a true British great." Murray bows out from the sport as a double Olympic champion, 3-time Grand Slam winner and former world #1. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2745 and €1.1779. The price of gold is £1,933.40 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,237 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And we've got some more breaking news for you now, and it's good news again. Great Britain's Emily Craig and Imogen Grant have won the gold medal in the women's lightweight double sculls at the Paris Olympics. Amazing work. It's been a great show so far. I think we've had one medal of every colour, haven't we?
I think you're the good luck charm. We need you on every day throughout the Olympics, and the more medals
top of the table.
Yeah,
let's hope so. Well, let's hope for our next guest we've got some medals for you guys as well.
I really hope we get a gold medal, because if we do, currently we're 6th in the medal table. One more gold and we leapfrog 2 countries up to 4th, just behind the States, China and France.
Not bad for a little island, is it?
Make that sound like it's another sport we're competing in, leapfrogging.
You just said,
leapfrogging.
Tom, you had an interesting idea just then off air. You said the US should compete as 50
independent states. Yeah, well, it's what originally, I mean, before the Constitution was ratified in 1787, the original sort of configuration was the Articles of Confederation, whereby the 13 colonies acted much more independently as 13 independent states, and the Continental Congress had no direct power over them. It could just recommend them.
I suppose they still do now. I mean, the politics, the laws, the culture, even the weather, you know.
Do you know what? In some ways, the European Union is more unitary than the United States, because individual states in the US can choose whether or not to have the death penalty, whereas in the European Union they can't. There are certain issues whereby that... Anyway, we're not talking about any of that on the show.
No. Aside from the Olympics, what are you going to have on your programme today?
Well, my goodness me, the aftermath of Keir Starmer's extraordinary statement yesterday, I think, has potentially been very, very misjudged. And I worry, actually, for this evening in the United Kingdom. Friday night, we know that people might not have work tomorrow morning. Will they feel more or less emboldened to go out onto the streets in some of these hotspots across the country? Did Keir Starmer's words yesterday do anything to simmer these tensions?
Maybe the rain will make a difference. If it pours down, people are less likely to go out and riot. But
well, certainly in the northwest, I think I can speak from experience. There probably will be rain, fortunately, actually, in this case.
But I think there is definitely a sense that Keir Starmer's sort of misjudged the mood of the country. And so we'll be looking at some of the reactions to that speech and all the issues obviously surrounding sort of concerns about 2-tier policing, the announcement of this new violent disorder unit That wasn't announced in response to the Leeds riots.
Why has Labour and Sir Keir Starmer always got some fancy unit for something?
Just because they're
Border Security Command.
Socialists. They love setting up a new entity, don't they?
Tom, do you know, Tom, if this is an existing unit that's going to be rebranded? I mean, like
they're not hiring. Basically, it's individual forces working, sharing data, working as sort of one national unit in the way that
coordination.
Because obviously, in some parts of the country, they have fewer resources. Other parts of the country, they have more resources. It's about getting people to the right places at the right times.
And what Keir Starmer has said is that they expect these people to be sort of like moving from area to area. They're going to focus on the trains, trying to stop people from being able to use the trains in order to go and riot or protest in other areas. And he's been very clear that he wants, rather than introducing new legislation, to use the legislation that already exists, but just to coordinate more between these forces.
And throughout, across Southend tonight, there is a dispersal order in place. There are some areas where they think there might be trouble, where they're trying to sort of preemptively stop things from kicking off. But I wonder, would it not have perhaps helped more if in that speech, of course, condemning all of the thuggery and the football hooliganism and the one particularly nasty person who made a Nazi salute in front of the Winston Churchill statue. I mean, of course, condemning all of that, but would it not have also helped to say, I understand why people are upset. I understand why people are angry. And amidst all of the wrong-uns who've been out there on the streets, there are clearly some people who are very worried about the state of children in this country and the safety of this country. But this isn't the way to do it.
I think there's a sense that he's sort of like shifted the narrative onto the issue of these riots rather than focusing on the legitimate anger and grievance that many feel over the murder of these 3 children.
OK, sounds like it's going to be a cracking show. But yeah, they never seem to do it. They never ask why Brexit happened properly. They never ask why Trump was elected. They never ask why there's a feeling of, unfairness and disillusionment among the working class in Britain. They never bothered. They just say, it's the far right, or they're thugs, or, they're thick. They don't understand. But there we go. Looking forward to it. Midday, Tom and Emma, thank you very much.
Well, up next, Harry and Meghan are going to Colombia. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hi again. Here's your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. It is still hot across some parts of eastern England today, and with that we could see a few further showers developing, but towards the northwest we do have a frontal system pushing its way in, and this is going to bring increasing amounts of cloud, some outbreaks of rain which could be quite heavy at times, and also some blustery winds. So turning increasingly cloudy and a bit wet across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland through today, and this rain could have some heavy bursts mixed in and perhaps even the odd rumble of thunder. Further south and east, a drier, sunnier picture, but a few showers perhaps for eastern parts of England. It is still going to be hot and humid in the east, temperatures peaking in the high 20s here, a little bit fresher than this further north and west. As we go through this evening, we are going to end the day with a pretty wet picture across much of Scotland. That front will have moved its way across, and so many places having a lot of rain to end the day. Do watch out for some spray if you're heading on the roads. A lot of that rain will have pushed through many parts of Northern Ireland, still clinging on in the far east, but something brighter for western parts. Meanwhile, for northern central parts of England and into Wales and the southwest of England, it will be turning increasingly cloudy as we go through this evening, and there will be some outbreaks of rain. But in the southeast, it is going to be a largely dry end to the day and holding on to clear skies as we go through much of the night. It's not really until we head towards dawn tomorrow morning that we start to see that cloud spilling its way in. But because there will be quite a bit of cloud and some outbreaks of rain across many parts of England, temperatures not dropping much here. A fresher story though across Scotland and Northern Ireland, could get into low single figures in rural spots. First thing tomorrow, do watch out for some wet weather across central, southern, southeastern parts of England. That front will be lying here, and there could be some waves along it, bringing some heavy pulses of rain, some uncertainty as to exactly where we're going to see the wet weather. Elsewhere, it's looking a bit drier and brighter, but some showers towards the northwest, and for all, a bit fresher.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, and guess what? Harry and Meghan are back. They're going to, of all places, Colombia. GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker has more. Cameron, I thought they were too scared to come to Britain because it was unsafe, yet they're happy to go to Colombia. Why?
Correct. Well, official invitation by the Colombian government. It's for online safety and ending violence against children. But speaking of safety, the UK-US governments both advised citizens against travelling to certain parts of the country. Granted, Harry and Meghan aren't going to those certain parts, but the Foreign Office does warn UK citizens that terrorists are very likely to try and carry out attacks, kidnapping rates remain high, and illegal arms groups kidnap hostages. And Prince Harry, as you pointed out, said that he's not going to bring Meghan or his children to the UK because of his downgraded security until that's sorted out. But it appears Prince Harry is prepared to take the risk for these charitable causes with Meghan Markle. But I think a lot of people are asking the question, you know, there is quite a lot of danger perhaps in Colombia. Now, I do understand that both of them are getting full security at all times while they're in Colombia. Of course, it's an official invitation by the government, so they will also be providing that level of security as well. But it's all coinciding with Harry and Meghan's first interview together, television interview, since that infamous Oprah interview in 2021. It's on CBS. Let's take a look.
Our kids are young. They're 3 and 5. They're amazing. But all you want to do as parents is protect them. And so as we can see what's happening in the online space, we know that there's a lot of work to be done there, and we're just happy to be able to be a part of change for good.
That when your children ask for help, someone, you know, is there to give it. You know,
if you know how to help.
Thank you.
At this point, we've got to the stage where almost every parent needs to be a first responder. And even the best first responders in the world wouldn't be able to tell the signs of possible suicide. That is the terrifying piece of this.
Yeah, Prince Harry and Meghan there talking about the support of supporting parents of children affected by online harm. Of course, quite an important topic, but it's a huge contrast, isn't it, between Oprah complaining about their lives as members of the royal family to now trying to perhaps champion a cause. I see a real switch with Harry and Meghan. Maybe they've seen the opinion polls on both sides of the Atlantic. They're not very popular, are they? People don't like it when they complain about being working members of the royal family, talking about privilege and all the rest of it. So are they now trying to perhaps act as working royals now outside of the folds by talking about quite an important topic? But will the British public or the American public swallow it?
I mean, look, one part of me thinks is, yeah, it's a good cause. You need to educate kids about online harms and so on. But also, for 3 and 5-year-olds, the age of Harry and Meghan's children, they shouldn't be online anyway. I mean, what are these parents doing? I'm not saying they do, but what are these parents of 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds giving laptops and iPads to kids anyway? They shouldn't be on the internet.
Yeah, I suspect Meghan is talking about her children in terms of what they could face in the future. Harry and Meghan, just about 6, 9 months ago, spoke to lots of bereaved parents whose children had unfortunately taken their own lives because of the online harms they suffered with cyberbullying and the rest of it. So it is a cause they really, really care about, but it is a kind of growing issue, isn't it? But are Harry and Meghan the best people to talk about this? Perhaps as working members of the royal family, they would highlight it. But those two now are not working members of the royal family. They want private lives. They're almost celebrities, aren't they? So are people going to listen to them? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I'm real transparent there. Cameron Walker, thank you so much for joining us. Up next, it's almost midday and an acceptable time to have a beer, perhaps. Very fitting as it's International Beer Day. You're with us here on Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Did you ever flirt with the idea of going to America?
Yeah, I've twice happened to be. Once I was offered in Canada the job of a weatherman.
Oh.
Yeah, I was offered that. And I just sort of thought of it, what is the point where your mother, your father would never see you on TV? What's the point of doing it if nobody knows you on it, you know? So I thought...
Big money, though, even for a weatherman.
Well, I did, yeah, it was more than a weather job, but I said no, basically. And then I went and I did this quiz show for Fox TV.
Oh.
Yeah, and they said, we want the Irish guy that does the lottery. I think they meant Dermot O'Leary or something. But they ended up, they got me and I couldn't believe it. And I went over to do a daytime version of this. And then 3 days into it, they changed everything and they said, this is so good, we're putting this out in the evening. And I remember phoning my wife and saying, we're going to have to move out to California.
Oh, wow.
They really want me here and I'm going down. You know that street with all the palm trees and whatever? That's the way I was going to work, in this limo and whatever. And I had a bungalow there and a golf cart. It was absolutely incredible. Anyway, I'll cut this very long story short. So I'm working really, really bad. A lot of very ignorant people, it has to be said. And really have one regret in my life that I didn't punch a guy when I was out there. I really would have, if I had my life to live again, I would have really satisfiedly been sacked for punching this git. But basically, anyway, they put the show out. One episode of the show went out and it came fourth in its rating. So it was behind Lost, it was behind The Biggest Loser, there was something else there.
Fair enough.
Fair enough, and it came fourth, and that was it. It disappeared. 36 shows or so disappeared. Disappeared, never to be shown again.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing
yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Well, you're joining us once again on Britain's Newsroom, and for those watching on TV, you may have noticed that Ben and I have now got pints in front of us. Very exciting. Well, that is because people across the world today are celebrating possibly the greatest beverage of all time. I think I would dispute that. But yes, a pint. It's International Beer Day today. So, shall we do a cheers to that?
Cheers. Apparently this is some sort of European lager. I don't know what, but... Feels a bit degenerate drinking before midday, but as they all say, it's probably...
Certainly drinking beer before day, but there we go.
Yeah, but I've not had breakfast either, so I reckon after half of this, I might be staggering out the studio. Anyway, let's get the expertise of the man who knows best about all things pubs and beer and boozers, Adam Brooks, who is speaking to us from his very own pub. Adam, what's it called? Is it the Three Colts?
It's the Three Colts in Buckhurst-Still, Essex, yeah.
So, International Beer Day, are you expecting plenty of punters at the bar to celebrate today?
I've got a cup of tea. I'm teetotal, by the way. But look, International Beer Day, I'm in a WhatsApp group with about 50 publicans. I've got a lot of publican friends. It's not something that any of us really know about, if I'm honest. So I think this is more an American thing that has spread around the world. But look, I'll champion it. It's my living. Obviously, I sell more beer in the pub than anything else. So... you know, if it brings a couple of extra customers, I doubt it, but if it does, fantastic today. Let's remember as well that beer, I think it's the third most consumed drink in the world after water and tea. So it's a very popular drink. Yeah, you know, again, I don't think any of my customers will know it's International Beer Day, as until you called me, I didn't.
Well, look, it gives us an excuse, Adam, on Britain's Newsroom to have a sip of a pint. I'm not a massive drinker either. I'm not teetotal. I have a sip maybe at dinner, or if I'm going to go on a night out, I will drink properly. But I don't. Do you think I'm a bit effeminate? Because I prefer like a G&T as opposed to a lager.
You say a G&T, but you told me earlier, actually, that it's a pink gin with lemonade. So a proper gin drinker like me would disagree with that as an idea.
You'd probably call me a southern fairy, wouldn't you, as a northerner?
That's something on those lines, yeah, probably. Now, Adam, I'm more of a wine girl myself, love a wine, but recently I've been getting a bit more into beer. I don't consider myself an expert, and there's some beers that I just absolutely can't stand. Guinness, for example, I'm not a Guinness girl at all, but there are some that I like. Do you ever see people kind of transitioning from drink to drink at the pub?
Yeah, a lot of the time. You see, some of the customers that are here all day, you see them drink a variety of drinks. But look, I am teetotal, but for the last 5 years, I've drunk zero alcohol beer or low alcohol beer. And there's some great ones on the market, and sometimes I feel like if I'm with a group of friends or customers, I feel like I'm mixing in. I'm not drinking Coca-Cola or water, feel like a kid. So the non-alcoholic beer market is huge now. So there's a lot of customers there. But while I'm here as well, it's International Beer Day. I've got to sort of highlight how the British consumer is being ripped off with beer tax. And consecutive governments have done this. And hopefully Keir Starmer might do something. A third of a pint of beer is tax. So, this is madness, how much tax we do pay in this country. And then we're taxed on the things that we enjoy as well. So,
yeah.
Keir Starmer, let's forget about the far right today. Let's about beer tax and get that down.
Well, they'd probably call drinking beer far right, Adam, but you never know. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Adam. Right, that's it from Britain's Newsroom, from Sophie and I today. Have you had fun?
Yeah, absolutely.
You will be after you've done that.
Yeah, exactly. So cheers to us, and cheers to Good Afternoon Britain, which is coming up next with Tom and Emma.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the